Hello everyone, welcome into our latest live video. I apologize for the late start. I thought I was broadcasting for the last 20 minutes. This is what happens when we cancel the show and we have another scheduled show at the same time. And then when I go to stream to today's show, it picked the wrong one because they were both set to the same date and the same time. And this is a consequence of scheduling. I always enjoy just working off the seat of my pants and setting up the videos 24 hours beforehand to stop this from happening. This has happened infrequently, and so it confuses me. I don't understand why it happened. But that's, for the last 20 minutes, I've been doing the show. So I have to start all over again. Bad. But I think as far, as scheduling shows, I think we need to remove all of the pre-scheduled shows. We need to only set them up 24 hours in advance, or we need to set the dates 30 days ahead of time and then set the final date no more than 24 hours in advance. This is exactly why I don't like scheduling. But we got through it, and I apologize for the delay. It took me a minute to figure out why it wasn't working when everything on my side looked good. And unfortunately, on your side, you're getting nothing. So welcome to the world of live broadcasting and one-person tech support. So anyway, welcome in everybody. As I mentioned today, did I mention it? I've done this a couple times. Today is Friday, the 9th of August, 2024. My name is CareyHolzman. CareyHolzman. And today I've got the final part 3 of the Jonsbo build scheduled for you guys, so we can wrap it up. Normally our builds go to 2 parts. Why did this one go to 3? Well, initially we put a regular MicroATX motherboard in it when a viewer made me aware or asked me, is this version 2 of the case that supports the motherboards with the rear connectors, all the connectors on the back of the board? I researched it, and sure enough, certainly appeared to be, but I didn't know for sure until I ordered a board, which I did. And we took the board out that we previously prepped and put in the new back connector motherboard and prepped again. And that was part 2. And that's why this one runs an extra part, because of that. Now, we don't have a lot to do to this system to button it up. Basically, we've got 2 more fans to put down here. These are reverse spinning fans so that we have the RGB side up. Well, we still have airflow moving in the same direction. Also, we've got this hard drive cage that will go in. But that, if you go back to part 1 and watch when we removed it, it goes back up in this corner. And we can't get that. It's in the way of some connectors as well as the power supply, which we have to put in. So we'll put the power supply in, then we can put the hard drive cage. Now, I'm not using a hard drive cage because for me, mechanical drives they're too slow and they're too unreliable. I know that there's people, a lot of home users that have old mechanical drives and they slap them in their computer as extra storage. It is a massive mistake. It's a terrible error in judgment if your data means anything to you. Not only is it profoundly slow compared to today's modern solid-state drives, uses more power, but it's way, way more unreliable, especially if they're older drives. So what I do personally, I only use NVMe drives. Even SATA drives are too slow. SATA SSDs, too slow for me. Also, I don't like all the extra cables. Drives are so inexpensive these days to just carry over an old drive because you had it laying around. I mean, if you want to do that, that's your choice, but the consequences you're going to pay for that, I hope you have backups. But in the meantime, I don't use the 3.5-inch drives, but I will put the tray back in it for whoever ends up using this computer will have that option, even though it's not. The only time I use mechanical hard drives is in a network attached storage. And I don't like saving data on any internal drive, let alone 2 or 3 or 4. Having 1 is enough, and having the limit on 1 is a good thing for you, because when you start filling it up, that's telling you either need to do some spring cleaning or get this data moved off somewhere, the data that you don't use as frequently, onto an external drive. So if you're playing multiple games, I would say whatever game you're playing or games, load those games. Any games you haven't played in a while, uninstall them, or move them to another slower drive. And then when you're ready to play them, you can move them back. Some of the games are massive, right? But if you get yourself a good 2 terabyte NVMe drive, you're in trouble if you have more than 2 terabytes of data And all you're doing is adding other data to mechanical drives. In my opinion, you're asking for trouble. External drives through USB, preferably solid state, as well as network attached storage. If you have that much data, network attached storage is the only thing that makes any sense as far as I'm concerned. And that would be my professional advice in a consult with you. If you don't care and you're slapping old drives in because they work, have at it. I can't run my business and reputation on that kind of work. You can do that at home. Now, with that out of the way, I just want to explain, you know, some people, they say I don't build gaming computers, but that's not true at all. Every computer I build is a gaming computer if you add a graphics card to it. In fact, many of them are cutting edge gaming computers if you add a graphics card. The problem is the price of graphics cards. We're totally viewer funded here. So everything you see in this video was paid for by memberships and by super chats. Nothing has been given to us or sponsored here. We are free to speak our mind, to do the video how and when we want. In order to maintain that independence, we need your support. YouTube monetization is fine for gas money, but it doesn't cover one of these videos, let alone as many as I make in a month. So if you, as the viewers, enjoy content like this, that's not paid commercials, essentially, which is what all the big tech enthusiasts do. If you'd like to see independent work, free of corporate control, who's going to pay for it? Unfortunately, your view, YouTube has determined your view is not worth what it used to be worth. It's almost nothing. It's so little. So you guys will ultimately determine the direction of this channel. If the viewers watching for free want to see more independent content, please help us. If, on the other hand, you can take it or leave it, then the channel direction will change. The channel won't go away, but the content may change to something that doesn't cost this much. Well, it would have to change. It wouldn't have a choice. You know, I could do something more podcasty, if you will, or just make videos less frequently and, you know, just get more real life clients that'll keep me busy. In the meantime, that's what's going on behind the scenes, and we'll see what's going on. We've been working a lot on Studio C, which is why today's video was originally supposed to be yesterday, but my attention was needed at Studio C, and that was critical because we need to get in there, and we can't get in there until this work is done. So I'm under a lot of pressure to get everything done, and I think that leads to these kind of errors like we saw today. So with that, hello to all my friends in green, all the members joining us in chat. If you'd like to interact with me during a live video, please consider becoming a member and helping keep us independent and away from corporate sponsorship. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to do corporate sponsorship. You're not going to keep me away from it. I'm not going to do it. Either we're going to do the videos independently, or we're not going to do this kind of content. And the viewers will decide, you know, budget-wise, what we can afford and how often we can afford to do it. So if you see less content or content subject matter changes that you're not interested in, if you didn't support the channel, you know, that's what's going to happen. If you do support the channel, I can't thank you enough for it. It's because of the support that we could independently buy everything you see here. Nothing was sent to us for free. This is where the money goes. So just so you know, just for full transparency. Let's see, there's a couple contributions I missed. Nick Caffrey contributed €3. He says, hello, Carey and Mara. Greetings from the Beira Peninsula in West Cork, Ireland. Gatorade contribution. He gives me a Gatorade contribution on one of the days I have a Coke. Thank you, Nick. I'll be getting to the Gatorade here a little bit later in the show, I'm sure. There's our friend Buster joining us from Scotland. A super shout out to Buster, as well as Oystein in Norway and our friend Frankie B in New York. These three members have been extraordinarily supportive in helping us get Studio C put together beyond words. Thank you to our friend Luke Greenia as well for his generosity and support. Boy, these guys have been with us for a number of years, and I can't tell you what it means to me. I would have never saw this coming, right? And it's because of them we're just doing so much more than we would have been able to, and getting the studio done much, much faster. With regards to, hold on a second, I just realized I don't have my stream up here. Let's bring that up. There was an earlier contribution. Oh, a few. Winston Liu contributed $2 Canadian. Thank you, Winston. That was the first contribution that came in today. And then our friend Buster out there in Scotland contributes 10 pounds. He says, good evening, Carey and Marlena. The temperature in Edinburgh, 58 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 14 degrees Celsius. All the best from Bonnie, Scotland, where it is raining. Yeah, we've been getting some rain too over here, but still 90 degrees Fahrenheit after the rain. It's practically steam when it hits the ground. It's not that bad, but yeah, high winds, and it's what we call our monsoon season, and that's all July and August, part of September. Gregory Howard with a $40 contribution. Right on. Thank you, Gregory. Gregory says, hello, Carey, Mara, and the folks in chat. Have a good day. Right on. Thank you, Gregory. Gregory owns the SegaTep build that we did. That's a mini ITX, kind of similar to this. This one's a little bigger, and this is made by Jonsbo. We have links to part 1 and part 2 of this build, right? Going into detail about the Jonsbo case. And be sure and check out part 1 and part 2 if you missed it. That'll get you caught up if you're curious, want to know more about the case. Paul Howe just became a member. Right on. Thank you, Paul. All right, so again, should be a pretty simple process today. The cable management in this is very minor. In fact, we could just skip the cable management altogether and throw the panel on. I take a lot of pride in my work, and I generally don't have to work on my own systems. But when I work on other people's systems, which are usually what come in for repair, I can tell if the person who built it took pride in their build or they just slapped it together. When I do cable management where it isn't necessarily needed, the reason I'm doing it is for my own personal pride. That's a sample of the quality of my work to the customer. Look at the detail this guy went through. Anthony Remus is the same way at Remus Computers in Vegas. He's at that level of detail. And I can tell you, when I'm working on a customer's computer, I can tell if the person who built it took pride in it or if they just slapped it together. And it's usually here for repair because they didn't take any pride in it. And that includes some cable management where you really don't need it. We could just jam all the cables in, throw the back panel on. This computer is going to look the same on the outside. But the next person who has to work on it may not be so happy. I have a pet peeve with regards to courtesy and consideration to other people. I'm always thinking of other people in a courteous way. So as we're renovating Studio C, and I'm finding work that was done where they cut corners, and we don't see it till we peel back the old work, you have no idea how much this upsets me. They left the mess for somebody else, right? So for example, if you're gonna lay carpet down, but you don't pull the old flooring up, you just lay the carpet on top of the old flooring, what you're saying is that'll be somebody else's problem. The carpet's not gonna last forever. The person who buys the house thinks, I've got carpet here, I wanna replace it. They pull the carpet up, they have a whole nother floor that then has to get pulled up, like laminate or vinyl, and all the glue has to come up if you wanna do it right to put a proper floor down. When you're opening up light fixtures and there's no electrical boxes, they just broke all city code and safety requirements and just jammed a wire through a hole they made with a screwdriver in the wall and then covered it with the light fixture and said, that'll be somebody else's problem, is effectively, whether they did that consciously or subconscious, I don't know, but it's just this idea that we're just going to take care of the problem today by just covering it up. It's like sweeping dirt under the rug, and then you sell the house, and then the person eventually lifts up the rug, and there's years of dirt that's been swept under there for you to clean up. I don't work that way. When I build computers, I do the cable management whether it needs it or not. Because if it needs repair, that's the way I want it to be able to work on it. It's much easier to get in and faster to get in and get out without having to untangle a mess of cables. If somebody else works on it, I'm sure that they'll appreciate that. And if I work on somebody else's who took the pride and the time to do that, I appreciate it. I may not ever meet them. And I may not, whether it's somebody's working on a machine I did or I'm working on a machine they did, but I have a respect for that and an appreciation and gratitude that somebody took the time and cared enough to put attention to detail and not screw over the next guy. So if you're wondering why it's important that I cover all these little details, it's because I'm in business, right? This is an example of the quality of my work. And if my work is sloppy, chances are I'm sloppy. If my work is not professional, I'm not professional. And if I want to play with the professionals, I have to play by their rules and their expectations, or I can just go out of business, right? So that's the logic here. In case you were wondering, is that just OCD? Partly, but it's justified. Let's see. Thomas MacT says, do you remember Holmes on Holmes? Yes, I loved that show. Holmes, Holmes, on Holmes, Homes, was a Canadian broadcast where I think HGTV showed it. This guy would go to homes that had issues with leaks, mold, construction that wasn't done right, and he would uncover it and say, well, look what they did here. Look at it. That's my guy. Man, if I could hire Mike Holmes to renovate Studio C, I would have confidence that I wouldn't have to micromanage him or supervise him, that it would get done right. The good news is we found a guy who I think is pretty damn close to that. He's really, really good. And we're very happy with the work. Unfortunately, it's just one guy. So there's only so much one guy can do in a day. Apart from that, the work is great. So it's getting done, and it's getting done right. And I don't feel I need to micromanage our handyman, our friend. We just had the electricians in, and it's a person I worked with before here at Studio B and at Studio A. He does excellent work. When you can find good workers that have that pride and attention to detail, so nice. Let me tell you, just to have to hire somebody to do something and then come in and have to clean up after them or reset what they did. I'm so accustomed to that. I hate it. It's like, can I hire somebody to just get this done? Why do I have to come in after them and correct or make adjustments? With the gentleman that we've got working now, I don't have to do any of that. So thank goodness. Lou Greeny mentions Mike Holmes Sr. Yeah, I think there's a Mike Holmes Jr., and they've got a show. I can't remember what it's called. I love that show. I watched a lot of Holmes on Holmes. I really like that guy. He's somebody that just, we're going to do this right or we're not going to do it kind of an attitude. I appreciate that. A shout out and a thank you to our friend Paul Gray in Australia for the Amazon gift card and his generous super chat contributions. There's another one I had failed to mention. My apologies, Paul. We certainly appreciate your generosity. And it's amazing when you think about Buster being in Scotland, Oystein's in Norway, Frankie B is in New York, and Paul Gray is in Australia. And then we have viewers all over the United States and Canada, as well as every once in a while we get viewers from Korea, Japan. We have a couple viewers like John Lewis joining us from Brazil. I think we've had a couple viewers from Portugal, and Spain, and Italy. Marco joins us from Italy. I don't know if we have any Kiwis. We've had viewers joining us from Turks, Chaos. I don't know how to say the other part of it. They're in the Bahamas, the Caribbean. We've had viewers from Jamaica. We've had viewers from Tobago. I didn't know this was going to be a geography lesson, but how cool is that? So, all right. So maybe I'll get some work done. We got a little bit of a late start today because of my mistake. My apologies. What can I tell you? In case you were wondering if I'm human, There you go. There's your evidence. Thank you, Mark Gaines, joining us from Northern Ireland. Oh, I left out Northern Ireland, the UK, Wales, Scotland. Should I say Ireland and Northern Ireland? Because we got them both covered. Thank you so much, Mark, for your continued support. Very generous supporter as well. And of course, to all our members. We would not be doing this video. Bajin Guy says it's called Turks and Caicos and Trinidad and Tobago. Isn't that what it's Trinidad and Tobago? Martin Hogg joins us from Scotland, if I recall. Martin contributes £4.99. He says, hey, Carey, I'm not really here. I'm not really here, but my email, my small contribution is right on. Cheers, Martin. Thank you. Luke Greenia mentions he gave in and he talked about drooling over this Leon Lee Hydro Shift all-in-one cooler. And he wants to put it in the Project Zero build. So we did 2 Project Zero builds. Luke purchased the first one. We still have, that's the MicroATX, and we still have the full ATX here. Actually, I think I moved it to Studio C now. Slowly getting everything moved over. And I guess I haven't seen this cooler, but I can imagine what it is. And I think he wants to replace the cooler in Project Zero with something a little more elegant and glamorous. So you'll have to let us know how that is to install and, does it work well? And is it quiet? Is it loud? Do you like it? Would you do it again? Would you recommend it? So I'm sure Luke will come back and let us know those results once he receives it. Apparently he just ordered it. And then hopefully he shares some pictures with us. We might have to order one and use one at some point if it's so fabulous. And you may notice the video's getting darker here. I'm slowly moving lights over to Studio C, so it's not your imagination if things don't seem as bright. We're going to slowly sort of degrade Studio B with regards to light quality and video quality as we move equipment over. And so without having 2 studios at the same time, we sort of have to break one down while we're broadcasting and set the other one up, which will, it's going to be rough the first few videos at Studio C as we get the lighting and sound adjusted. But, we've done that a few times now, so it shouldn't take as long as it's taken to get it right here. All right, so that's what's going on in the background. That's what I'll be doing all weekend. I know, get the violins out. Let's see. A shout out and a hello to Paul Gray, Chris Johnson, Bajin Guy, Lou Greenia, Bill Sony T, Garfield Rupe, Thomas Mack T, Christopher Horton, Barry Klein. Hello to Mark Gaines and Mark Leibowitz. Hello to Paul Howe, Gregory Howard, Paul 1980s, Chris Johnson, Peter Laycock, of course, Mara in the chat room. She's the administrator for the channel and doing all of the background work that needs to happen behind the scenes, as well as answering your emails and working with potential sponsorships or product reviews. So she's quite busy. She did the thumbnail for today's video along with the description. And that takes a massive workload off of me. And she does a very good job at it. Hello to Essential Working Too Hard, 3D Everything. Wayne Ellison. Ron Barnish saying hello. Richard DeFries. Chris Garrett says hello. There's APOC saying hello. There's our friend Oystein. William Denton and Hector Aviles say hello. Nick Caffrey. Kurt Schlegel says hello, as does Joe Martin. Patrick Manny. Trevor Dunn. Captain Blinsky saying hello. Essential Working Too Hard. David Moore and Wayne Ellison. Chico 48. And these are all members here in our chat room. Thank you guys so much for being members so we can continue to make videos like this. Jack Kugelmus says hello. Welcome in, Jack. Good to see you. There's Dave Stetzel, another generous supporter here. Thank you, Dave. Good to see you. And I think I can get to some work here. So what do I want to do first? Decisions. We have 2 fans that need to go down at the bottom of this case. Now, these are reverse spinning fans. And the reason these are reverse spinning fans is so that we can have the RGB side up without interrupting our airflow. When you put your fans in, you've got to consider the direction of the airflow. And when you're adding fans primarily for the RGB lights, you know, this is the thing that bothers me. These fans aren't going to help our cooling one bit. Not at all. First of all, we're not putting a graphics card in it. And even if we were, you probably wouldn't have any issue. You know, the graphics card has its own cooling system. However, what we're doing is we're looking for lights. And so these are Jonsbo lights going into a Jonsbo case with a Jonsbo cooler that has Jonsbo fans on the all-in-one cooler. So this is a primarily all Jonsbo build, which might make you think that this is sponsored, but it is not. All of these components we bought. So I want to reiterate that. I would love nothing better than for Jonsbo to send us cases for free for review. They have yet to do that. So if we're going to review them, we have to buy them. In the meantime, finding some of these parts was a little difficult. I think I got the fans from Newegg. The case, I think, came from Amazon. Maybe Newegg. The cooler came from eBay, directly from Jonsbo in South Korea. DHL showed up to my house with a package from South Korea. Most of the packages I get are from China. So I never had one from South Korea before, direct from the manufacturer. So if you're looking for some of these parts from Jonsbo, you might want to look at eBay. Pay attention to who the seller is, because the seller might be Jonsbo. The only issue that I have, or that you might have when you order parts that way, is you're going to have no warranty and no support. The reason the cooler is not sold here in America is because it's not authorized to be sold here in America. There's no warranty. This would be considered a gray market purchase, even though I'm buying it direct from the manufacturer. You're not breaking any laws. It's just there's no infrastructure to support you here. So until they get that, otherwise they'd be like AliExpress, right? And I admire that they didn't go down that road. They haven't yet. So getting their parts to America, you know, if you look on eBay, you'll find them. Otherwise, Amazon has some Jonsbo stuff. Newegg has some Jonsbo stuff. And all the stuff you can't find, you might be able to find it on eBay direct from Jonsbo. And it shipped fast from South Korea. It only took, it was less than a week. So just so you know. We also need to put a power supply in here. And I'm thinking, what kind of power supply should I put in this? If we're not going to put a graphics card in it, which again, I'm not going to do that. We don't need that big of a power supply. And we don't even need a modular power supply because we have so much room back here to just put cabling. I mean, it's very generous in the cable management. You know, we've dealt with some other cases, a lot of other cases, where there was no consideration for cable management. And then I showed you that NZXT case that had all the cable management more or less pre-done, all the tracks. You put the cables in the tracks and close the Velcro. And with the exception of maybe 1 or 2 cables, you're done, finished. Man, I really like that about NZXT. They've got to be my favorite case manufacturer. But I must say, the Jonsbo case, this is pretty nice. If I had one complaint, which I do, it's that they've taken a USB port from us. We have a USB Type-C, just one, that's fine, because the connector we plug that into only gives us one. But the connector we plug in the big Type-A USB gives us 2. But they only return 1. So where's the other one? Too bad, so sad you don't get it. Why? Well, typically because it adds to the cost to manufacture the case. I'll spend the extra $1, give me the other USB port up front. I've seen that more and more, and it's annoying because I have 2 USB ports on the streamer up front, plus the Type-C. That's the way it should be done. So I can access the front much easier than the back for things like flash drives. And yeah, I might want to plug in more than one flash drive and copy the data from one to the other, for example. I might want to plug in a microphone into one and just temporarily for a podcast. I don't want to have to reach around the back and locate it. So to just give me that one, not a fan. Other than that, I'm having a hard time finding any shortcomings on this case. It's different. It's unique in the sense that you're not likely going to find somebody else with this case that you're going to run into in your life. Not likely you're going to just be somewhere and see this. Number two, seems really easy to work in. Number three, good price. Not a great price, but not overpriced. It's right where it should be, fair price. It's roomy. Now, you are going to be limited to a MicroATX or mini ITX board on this case only. So just know that. And know that if you're ordering any parts from outside of the country, you're not going to probably get no support or warranty will be honored here. It would be too costly to send the unit back to South Korea for warranty. You might as well just buy another unit, be cheaper and faster. I'm okay with that because I want to evaluate the quality of the case or the lack thereof of working on it and see whether determine if there's a value there. When it comes to a case, there's really very rarely a warranty issue. If there is, it usually involves the circuit boards here on the front ports. But this is sold in the US, so we would get warranty support for that. It's only the all-in-one cooler that what we call gray market in that sense. Okay, so power supply. How much power should I put in here? I think, let me go look at our power supply. Yeah, let me look at our power supplies. I have that test power supply on the floor, which has the really long cables. And I'm like, hey, that would work great. We have so much cable management room in here. But I feel like it's a little bit small for, I don't know. I feel like we need something a little bit higher quality for this build. So I'm looking at my inventory of power supplies. And you know what? No one's going to see it. It works fine. I think we can just go ahead and use the EVGA 700 GD. Now, this power supply is a bit older. I've had this at Studio A and forgot it was there, and it's been kind of collecting dust. And it's got some super long cables. And the only way I can use a power supply like this is on a very large case. This was clearly designed to go into a big tower. Or a case like this where there's what we call dual chamber, where we have a whole chamber in here to hide all the cables. Certainly no need to go with a modular cable arrangement on this. Not that you couldn't, it'd just be sort of pointless because this is so unusual to have this much room for cable management that all these cables I'm not going to use will easily fit in there. Or I keep this around just as my tester. Usually I only use power supplies as testing power supplies for a few months before they get put into a system. And that's my way of testing them, right? If they've been working great for a few months here, just power around and testing and prepping boards, I feel very confident putting that in a customer's system. Some people might call that used. I call it thoroughly tested. And then that way we also continue to test the next power supply. They're never the same twice. Usually they're not the same twice. So other brands, other models of similar brands or the same brand. And so that's how I rotate around the product. And that's also how I give the customers such a good price, right? Because I'm not selling it at the full new price either. So that's kind of the business model there. Thomas says 600 watts. He says this will be a good choice. What do you guys think? Should I use it or should I do something else? I've got a pretty wide selection of power supplies from 550 watts to 1300 watts. And I'm just trying to find the appropriate power supply for the build. So if you have any suggestions or objections, this is the time to let me know. It looks like there is a power supply frame inside of here. All How is saying is 600 to 650. Yeah, well, this is close, right? It's 700. The extra 50 is too much. So yeah, there looks like there's a power supply frame in here. And I think I have to take these 4 screws out, and then the frame inside will come out. I put the frame on the power supply, put the power supply back in the case, and then put those screws back in. I love that design. I think that's great, because what that tells me is if I ever have to get into this and replace the power supply, I can be in and out really quick. $700 watts is too much. Well, the reason I'm thinking the 700 watt, and honestly, anything at 400 watts or above is going to be fine for this, is if the future owner of this wants to add a graphics card. Now, if they want to add the latest graphics card, they're going to need an 850 watt or better power supply for like a 4090. However, at least with a 700 watt, that covers the vast majority of graphics cards, as far as they wouldn't have to change the power supply. And Thomas MacT mentions the EVGA here is color matched. You're only going to see the back of it, and many power supplies I use are black, and they're all going to be sort of color matched. The only concern I guess I would have is, do I put the power supply in with the fan? Remember, this fan breathes air in, facing the back of the motherboard? Or do I turn the power supply around so the fan faces the back of the computer case? So I would imagine, normally when we put power supplies in, we're drawing air in from the outside of the case, usually. And I don't think it really matters that much. I don't think it's, as far as like temperatures, I don't think it'll make much difference. However, my instinct is to let this power supply sit with the fan facing the panel, and the panel has a vent with a filter on it, which I'm imagining goes on. See, I can't tell, and I can't remember how I took it off, but the vent probably goes over this side where the power supply goes, so it aligns with the fan. I hope that's how it works. It won't suffocate it either way, but I would love to have it get outside air, because your power supply is its own ecosystem. So many people are so fixated on the temperatures of their CPUs or their graphics card, but no one really ever checks the temperature of their power supply. And the reason they don't do that is there's often no sensor there. And the power supply, when it draws air in, it blows that air out the back. It does not enter the case. So while you're obsessing over temps that really typically don't matter, the one thing that does matter, you're totally ignoring, and may even have so much dust on the filter of your power supply that you're suffocating it and it's running hot. And you're too busy being distracted looking at your CPU cooler temps. Listen, that's fine, but I just want you to be aware. This is something that you should be obsessing about, not as a working technician. If your computer GPU or CPU are overheating, you'll know. You don't need software to tell you. If this power supply is overheating, you could have all kinds of weird problems that are very difficult to diagnose. And sometimes it's as easy as cleaning a dust filter you've been ignoring. A dust filter, many times these power supplies, they sit facing down, and they're just a big vacuum cleaner on your floor if you've placed your computer on the floor. Or if you're in Arizona or Nevada, or New Mexico, if you're in a dusty environment, that dust is getting inside of that power supply. Or if you have a case with a filter and you've not cleaned that filter ever, by the way, have you? You could be suffocating the power supply. If you have no filter, then what you're doing is you're covering all the internal components by putting a coat of dust. I say coat because what happens when it's cold outside? You put on a coat. It's an insulator. Do you want to put on a heavy winter jacket on a hot August day? Because that's what you're doing if you're never blowing out the dust from inside of your power supply. You're making it wear a coat in the summer, and it's going to get hotter and hotter and hotter. And this requires your attention, in my opinion, twice a year. Just check it, make sure the fan is spinning, visually inspect it. Some power supplies have fans that only spin when they get warm, so keep that in mind. They usually have a switch to turn that on and off. They'll call it hybrid or eco mode. And one way the fan always spins, and the other way the fan the eco or hybrid mode, the fan only spins when needed, like a graphics card. So if it's not spinning, don't freak out. Not right away. You know, check if your power supply does that. Get yourself an air blower. I use on Amazon, and maybe we can get Mara to add a link to one of these USB air dusters. They're made by a number of different companies. They run about $60 last I checked. They're USB-C rechargeable. There's no battery to swap. It's already built in and sealed. And it's pretty powerful. Blow off my toupee. It's pretty darn powerful, and they're great for cleaning up this way and this way. Make sure you get all the dust out of it if you want optimal efficiency and performance from your power supply. Okay. That's my power supply tip for today. Let's see if we can get this frame off. Let me step around so you guys can watch me do it, maybe. See if this works. David Moore thinks I should put a 750 watt power supply in there. Hey, I don't think 50 watts will make a difference. Christopher Horton says, Carey, that's what I was saying. The power supply allows the user to add components. This is true. Yes, but if you put too big of a power supply, so okay, this is a 700 watt. This computer probably won't even use 300. I recommend a 400 or better because you don't want to run your power supply at the limit or it's going to run hot and degrade. But you also don't want to get such a big power supply, like a 1300 watt, and then stick it in a 300 watt system because your power supply loses all of its efficiency, all of the 80 plus ratings, you can throw those away. If you can have 20, 30% overhead for future, that's great. If the system's locked in and you're not going to be upgrading it, you're going to keep whatever components you've got. Get a power supply that's 10% more than you need. 10 to 20% more than you need. And that way the power supply is not working, you know, pedal to the metal the whole time. And that also gives you a much better efficiency rating, which means the electric cost is lower. So you can go too low in your power supply wattage and you can go too high. You want to be about 10% minimum more than you need. 10 to 20%, get 20% more if you can. Anything above that, you start losing your efficiency. If that matters to you. You can Google power supply calculator if you don't know how much power your system draws. You can also get a little kilowatt meter. They're like $20 on Amazon, and you can see and monitor how many watts you're actually drawing from the wall. That can help guide you to what size power supply, if you're replacing yours, that you should use or you should have. All right, so I'm going to guess that these screws right here probably hold the power supply frame in. I'm not looking at any directions. I do everything intuitively. The problem with intuition is it varies from person to person, but mine's based on over 30 years in the industry. So I feel like, for me anyway, it's almost like a video game for me. I want to figure it out. And yes, the directions may or may not be helpful. I usually find the directions more confusing. Once I have my hands on it and it's in front of me, I can usually figure it out. And I enjoy figuring it out. It's fun for me. Reverse engineering is the word for it. And there is our power supply frame. And the way it came out, you'll notice there's a lip right here where the screws I just removed were installed on the bottom. And then you'll see they both face up. We want to remember how to put this back in. We don't want to put it in this way, or we're going to figure that out, right? And then this bottom part, this is going to go on our power supply, which I put, of course, I put it all the way where I can't see it or reach it. Of course I did. And what we'll do This again, if we want we got to think about if we want the fan to face outward towards the edge of the case, and we need, this is going to be the top, and this is going to sit on here like so. Then we put it in this way and lock it in. That looks like the right orientation. If we were to try to install it by turning it around, these brackets won't line up properly. You'll see even the spacing on the screws is wider on the top than it is on the bottom. So it only goes in one way. Otherwise, if you don't take your time to figure this out now, you're going to be taking it apart and doing it again. So you don't want to put the bracket on the way I was just trying. That's the front of the bracket. We want to put it on the back of the bracket. And we want to secure this down with the same screws we always use when we're installing a power supply directly to the case. Instead, we do it to the frame the same way. And then the frame secures to the case using the screws provided that we just removed that held this bracket in to begin with. And we're going to install it this direction so our fan faces out. That means our cables are going to be up at the top. We have to consider that for cable management. If they're going to, that's the other issue you need to consider. Could that be a problem? In this case, it looks like it'll work either way from my guessing, sort of picturing it in my head, but on some other cases, that may dictate the orientation. And of course, if you have a modular power supply, that can make a difference as well as to how you're going to, the ease or access you're going to have to plug in without removing other components that might be in the way if the power is oriented one direction versus another. Now, if you never open the computer up and you never work on it, then none of this matters. Just slap it in there and off you go. Luke Greeny says, I work a minimum of 45 hours a week. I start my workday at 1:30 a.m. Oh, he's a night owl like me. I don't start my workday at 1:30 a.m., but I will end my workday usually, it was around 3 or 4. Now that I'm getting older, it's around 2. So might call me second shift, and I guess Luke would be graveyard shift. Similar, we have a little overlap. Mark Leibowitz said, a client called me in to work on what turned out to be an extremely dusty PC. This thing had dust dinosaurs. I blew the whole thing out, including the power supply and cooler, and it's amazing now how fast and quiet it became. Yeah, but that's years of neglect, typically. Mara says she added the link to the air duster to the video notes. Thank you, Mara. Alhez joins us. Peter joins us from Amsterdam in the Netherlands and contributes €1. Thank you, Peter, as always, my friend. I need some screws to secure this frame, so there may be some extra screws in the box for that. Typically, when I open a power supply brand new in a box, it comes with screws, and they're also typically black screws because I want the screws, even though you can't see them, I still want the colors to match. There are silver ones that are pretty common. And then there are the black ones, which are the sort of the new standard. Let me just look in the motherboard box real quick and see if I have power supply screws in here. These are just your standard hex head screws. Well, you know what? What's this? Oh. There may be some screws in here intended for the power supply, but they're not the style I want to use. And, you know, I have a lot of screws, so a lot of loose screws. Screws loose. On Amazon, I bought a big bag of these standard hex screws. So if you're like me and you're working on a lot of machines, and again, maybe Mara can find these and put the link in the video notes. These are from Honbay, and it's just a bag of Standard black case screws. These are used on power supplies. I think it's like $6 and you get 50. Looks like more than 50. Anyway, I use 4 at a time, so it's going to take me a while to get through a bag. Now, when I first started in this business, you couldn't buy these screws. I was hoarding every extra screw I had from builds and repairs. Now you go on Amazon, you can find almost anything you need, have it delivered right to your door, and it's super inexpensive. My, how times have changed. All right, let's see, gonna line this up. We don't want to tighten any of these screws, just want to get them started. That. William Denton with a $10 super chat. Right on. Thank you, William. It's two. Two more. These are just the most commonly used screw in computers, is the hex head. I'm sure they have a name. What do they call these? I'm sure it's on the Amazon direct description of the size and details, but they're just standard case screws. If Mara can't find the link, I'll do it after the show and I'll add it. They're so inexpensive, it almost doesn't make sense not to have them if you're doing regular work on a computer. Better to have the screws you don't need than need the screws you don't have. So what I'm doing, I'll bring this up to the camera and show you. Getting those screws started just same way as we would on the back of a computer case. There's one offset corner here and the rest of the screws. That one's in the corner. That one's just a little lower in the corner. And then that one. So same location, same screws. And you'll notice there is some wiggle to this. And so that's why we don't tighten the screws down, because if we tighten 1 or 2 or 3 down, it's the 4th one that won't be aligned. So this gives us the ability to move this around to where we need it for all of the screws to align straight and not strip out. And my screwdriver has a torque setting of just 3, which means it turns off at that torque setting. Now that's not absolutely critical. It's more a consistency for my work. I want all of the screws tightened to the same. I don't want to leave any or forget any. And on a power supply, I will often tweak those down just a little bit more because they're relatively short screws holding on a very large, if you think about how short the screw is and how big and heavy the power supply is, especially if you're going to be moving this around, we don't want these screws to come loose. We don't want that power supply breaking off and floating around, banging up against things. I will say, with a dual chambered case, I don't think it would do much damage, except because we have the back connectors on the rear connectors on the back of the motherboard. If this power supply broke free in shipping, it would probably smash all those up. On a regular motherboard, may not do much damage other than to the inside of the case. My preference is let's make sure we secure it so that won't happen in shipping. If you're not shipping it, probably don't have to obsess about it like I do. And that's going to go right back in the way we took it out. And I just need to get some of these cables out of the way. Now, there is no track for this to sit in. I mean, that's, I suppose, another, if I had a complaint, it would be nice if we could lock this in. Okay, so because it kind of floats, the screws are what locks it in. I really feel like they should have some way for that to slide in a tab into a slot to hold that in position so we can put the screws in and add a little extra support for the weight of the power supply instead of putting all the power supply weight onto the screws. Now remember, the screws that hold the bracket in also support the weight of the power supply along with the screws on the adapter. So it's sort of helping split the load, but on the other hand, these are very, very tiny screws. I mean, can you imagine the stress on a hanging power supply that's being held up by nothing more than a screw that small? And if you're putting in a 1300 watt power supply that's this big and weighs like 6 pounds, these screws are going to hold it, believe it or not. But you got to think about that if you're shipping it or moving it. You don't want to bang it down too hard or drop it, or you'll snap these right off. I can guarantee. Ask me how I know. But this power supply at 700 watts, it's more or less very similar in weight. It's not an extended power supply, which could be an issue if it was modular. And, you know, it sits low enough that the hard drive tray that we've got up here will sit above it. But we've got to make sure we get all our connectors on first. The power supply is even going to block all the motherboard connectors. You know, our front port audio is here. To have a way to remove this power supply quickly, in other words, what I would have done if I designed this case is I would have made that adapter a little different. What I would have done is the same design with screwing the adapter onto the power supply, but then once the adapter would go into the case, it would, again, it would have some kind of a tab or slot that it would slide into to line it and help support the weight. And then maybe just 2 screws at the top and no screws at the bottom. That way, if you had to get into it, you just take 2 screws out, slide the power supply out, and you can get to those, access to those back power connectors. The rear, not just power connectors, but the rear. We got our fan back here, RGB. All of the normal front port umbilicals would normally plug into the front of the board. They're all plugging into the back. Once they're plugged in and you put your power supply and your hard drive in, you won't be able to access them without removing those items. So those items should be able to come out quick, simple, and they don't. So that's ding number 2 on this case. It's a minor ding, but if you had to work on these 8 hours a day, you'd probably be cursing a lot. Like, let's say you had an office and the office decided we want to put all, you know, we're going to use this Jonsbo case for all of our workstations. And you're going to be our IT guy, and you're going to manage, upgrade, update, be responsible for taking care of these. You're going to get sick of it real quick. You can see the amount of pressure I have to put on that to get it to align, because there's nothing to hold it in place for me. And because my screwdriver is set to a very low torque setting, on the power supply, I will use my regular screwdriver and just tighten those up a bit more. I have seen what happens when a power supply comes loose. It is not pretty. Now, don't over tighten them. The torque setting of 3 is great for everything else: hard drives, motherboards, case screws. Power supply is really, the power supply and the heatsink are the only things I tighten down beyond that. And look at all the ports we got on the back of this board. 3 USB Type-Cs, plus 1 USB Type-C up at the front, and Wi-Fi 6 and a 2.5 gig Ethernet, plus 4 regular USB. There's a clear CMOS button for overclockers, and then 3 more Type A USB ports. That's a total of 7 USB Type A's, plus the one up front, that's 8, and then 3 USB Type-C's plus the one up front, that's 4. That's 12 USB ports available on this small computer, thanks to the B760M ASUS BTF Wi-Fi motherboard. BTF meaning Back to the Future, but they only put 1 T in it for some reason. Now, as I mentioned, I have no plans to put a 3.5-inch hard drive in here. I think this will hold 2 3.5-inch hard drives, potentially one on the back and one inside of it. I don't know. That seems sketchy to me. To each their own. I wouldn't even put a mechanical drive in a modern computer, only in a NAS. Don't have the patience for it, and they're just too unreliable. I understand they're cheap, and I also understand why. So anyway, I don't need to go over that again, do I? Christopher Horton says, Carey, I visualize what you mean. A little slot to hold the power supply with a couple screws to hold it in. Yeah, well, thank you. That's what I'm trying to visualize or trying to put into words. It would be simple, right? It wouldn't really complicate the case manufacturing or tooling. So I don't know why they didn't do that. They did everything else so well. I also think get rid of the 3.5-inch drive bay. I understand people want this, but sell it as an option. Make them buy it. There's some situations where it's appropriate, and I think this would be one, to lower the price of the case, keep this out of it. And if people want to buy that, sell it as an accessory. Be Quiet does that with a lot of their cases. Now, let me turn this around. Again, I'm trying to show you guys as much as I can here. It's a black case with black cables, and it's probably going to be very difficult for you to see, especially when my hand is going to cover up what I'm doing. But I'm going to do my best to show you. Right now, all we need for this whole system to function is our 24-pin motherboard power connector and our 8-pin CPU power connector. And I'm going to plug those in now. And of course, they usually go in the front, but on this motherboard, they go right back here. And as long as I'm careful, I don't knock any of my other cables loose, these will be the last two cables we have to hook up. The little clip is going to go towards the outside of the motherboard like it normally does. But do check that if you're buying a different board. Check to see where the little plastic nubbins is. It's a Mitch word, the nubbins, for this little clip to grab onto. It's only going to be on one side of the connector. It takes a second to tell. That way you're not struggling to try and put it on backwards, because it won't go on backwards. And we all love struggling, don't we? Now, I can barely see what I'm doing here. It's so dark in here. And without that other studio light, I'm going to need a flashlight. Despite the size of the connector, I still can't see how it aligns without extra light. Let's try this again. Oh, now I can see. All right, a 24-pin. We'll put that one on first, because that's usually the most inflexible, the most rigid of the cables. We'll get that one out of the way first. So the problem, this older power supply that I'm using on this, has this additional 4-pin in order to keep this end compatible with old 20-pin motherboards, which I haven't seen in 20 years. But what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to hold it together like this, rotate it in the proper orientation, and then get all of these pins aligned straight. What's happening is the pins are aligning this way or this way, and I'm having a hard time getting the pins aligned on the front and the back or the bottom, which it has to be completely straight or it won't fit into the socket properly. There it goes. And it's really a visual, partly visual, and partly this little piece of the case is a little bit in the way, but it's not that big of a deal. Once it's on there, we just want to firmly push it down and make sure that that clip gets engaged to hold that connector in, because we wouldn't want that coming free and shipping. Let me get this back panel over here. And then finally, we just have our 8-pin CPU power, which is right up here at the top. Clip goes towards the edge. Again, check it on your board to make sure you're not trying to put it in backwards. It will not go in backwards, and you're just going to be wasting your time and getting frustrated. Ask me how I know. Okay. So you can see we have a lot of extra cables with this power supply, right? And in fact, it looks like I didn't plug on my Type-C for some. Why didn't I do that? So it's not that having a modular power supply would be a waste of money. It's just that this particular power supply, the cables are super long, like it was made to go in a very tall case. And I think we'll accommodate it just fine in here once I get this USB-C cable on, which is, I know why I took it off. It gets in the way of the power connector. So with the power connector there, essentially we've got this big motherboard power connector, and then there's a space where the USB Type-C goes. And then we have our big USB 3.0 connector right in a row. So I remember now I took this off because it was getting in the way of me taking the power connector on and off when we were prepping the board. Now I should be able to put it on there. And again, this piece of the case right here is getting in the way of my hand. I'm not quite sure how I'm going to do that. It's almost like the power supply has to come out, but again, I can't see, so if you got big sausage fingers, it ain't going to happen. I'm just saying that's too tight. This power supply would have to come off, but you'd leave the connectors on and then put the USB-C, the USB Type-C front umbilical cable on, then put the power supply in. And I can tell I did not put this cable on good. This is no way, this is not good. Yeah, I got to fix that. The way I fix it, I'm rocking it up and down while pushing down at the same time. When I go to take them out, I take them out the same way. Rock it while pulling it. It's better. It's not great. That is in there stiff. Okay. Pull on the cable. This came out. So clearly that was not clicked in there. And again, with this piece in the way, it's challenging to put that on. Out of curiosity, I know this was in my way last time, but I can't remember how it was in my way. So with that connector out of the way, this will probably be easier to put on. But once I put this on, then the other connector will be harder to put on. I wish we could take this off. Maybe we can. Can we? Let me get my glasses and see if those are screws or rivets. Because if we could take that off, that's going to solve all of my access issues. It's tight to get my hands in there because of that. I don't know if that comes off or not. Let's see. I mean, there are screws. It looks like it comes off. These are different screws. These are the case panel screws, and they're going to be unique for each case. So we definitely want to put them back where we took them out. Okay, there's the two case panel screws there. Will this come off? There may be. We slide this back. I believe this comes up. And we'll set, I'm running out of room to put stuff. You set that down there. There's the top of the radiator that we installed, our all-in-one radiator. What is holding this piece on? What am I missing? Oh, okay. There are screws inside of the case that are holding this panel on, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see them. Let me step around and see if I can show them to you. That may make removing this panel impractical, but at least it's possible. Right inside, right up here, there's a screw. Right up there, there's this big silver screw, and then there's another one in the middle that'll be damn near impossible to get to because the big USB connector's in the way. And I'm guessing there's a third one all the way at the bottom. Yes, there is. Plus there's a big support beam right here with a screw there, and one down at the bottom as well. So that is not easy to get apart, not at all. Well, that sure would be nice if we could take this piece off just to get access to this side of the board for the hidden, cable support. So because we can't, it's going to be a tight fit is what I'm trying to say. We can do it. You can do it. Okay, there's that one. I guess I can put the lid back on. I was going to show you that's the top. I'm not sure why this lid comes off so easily. What reason would we have to need to take it apart? It sure would be nice if they implemented this type of removal on this panel right here with maybe just a couple screws to keep it from sliding up on you. The top has no screws, so if you pick this up and you're grabbing it by the top, it could slide and then fall. You'll end up holding the panel as your computer goes falling. So it would be nice if there was a screw that locked it, at least one, to prevent it from accidentally being dislodged. So these are all pretty minor. I mean, they're so close to having a great case here. Now, on a newer power supply, the cables wouldn't be this long, and this piece, these days, this connects in. But this is a bit older style. This is how we used to have to do it. And I'm a little rusty, if I'm honest. I hadn't do this in a long time, let alone do it sideways. Normally, we have the motherboard facing down, so we can put pressure down onto the connector using gravity to help us. But I'm trying to make it so you can see. I'm not quite sure how much you can see, and if I'm just doing this in vain. This connector does not want to go on. I feel like it's hitting the edge of the clip is hitting the edge of this hole. Like the hole just needs to be a millimeter wider this way. So what I'm going to do is just put a little muscle into it. Lay this down. Oh, it's pretty high up like that. See if I can't just push past that. So close. Yeah. So I'll tell you, here's what's happening. We have an opening for the motherboard power connector to go through and the back motherboard tray of this case. And that connector has the clip on the outside. So when we go to put our plug in, our clip that locks on widens out to get around it and then goes flat once it's clipped underneath. Right? The clip goes down and it widens. And once you get past it, clips underneath. And as it's widening, it's hitting the metal motherboard tray because the hole is not wide enough for the clip to be on the outside. I don't know what to do about that. I mean, I'm stuck because the connector's on, but it's not locked in. It just, if you pull on it, it just comes right off. I'm not sure if I just need to really muscle that through the metal. I mean, part of me wants to get a Sawzall and cut a little groove in the metal for this. It's just a couple millimeters. Is it the connector on this power supply? I think they're all the same. So I don't know why this is as difficult as it is, but here we are. Could be the motherboard standoffs are too tall, and so the connector's not coming all the way through. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what the standards are for the rear connector boards, but this one, the 12-volt one, went on just fine. And of course, we don't have anything in the way of that. What we have problem with is this tight area where we have a bunch of cables all together, USB, front panel connectors, USB Type-C, and then our big main, most inflexible connector is our big motherboard power connector. So as it is now, it will power up, but I don't know. If I show it to you this way, maybe you can see it better. There's a hole right here. Right here. Oh, here. That's our main power connector right there. And do you see how much of it sticks out? There's a bit of it that sticks out through this side of the case. We have to get the clip all the way to the other side. So it's almost as if the standoffs are too tall, or simply put, they should have widened this area for the clip to come through. I mean, it's close. It looks like if I just force it down, I mean, I don't know how difficult it's going to be to take out for the next guy. Remember, we talked about that, but I don't know what choice I have other than maybe trying a different power supply, but I have a hunch that's not really going to do us any good. So the only way I know to do that is to turn this face down, maybe just go ahead and put it on the floor because it's too tall on this bench. And then I can grab the connector and put my full body weight on it. No, it's just not. See if I can do it this way. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to bend the hole in the case away from the clip temporarily just to get the clip past it. Come on now. Oh, I heard something. I think I got it. Yes, I got it. So taking that out is going to be fun, but I think taking it out is going to be easier. But you shouldn't have to go through that much effort to get that connector on. So all they had to do was widen that hole 2 millimeter, 1 millimeter, 2 millimeters. We wouldn't have had that struggle. It was close enough that as I was pushing down with my weight with this hand, I was bending the motherboard tray towards me to get it past the clip. And then once it passed, then it locked in. That's too tight. It's too narrow. The good news is this should be done. We should be able to just, now look, I'm going to cable manage this, but in order to speed up the video, I want to give you an idea of what this is going to look like. So with our hard drive tray here, making sure we've got everything connected. Otherwise, this is going to block access to these other plugs when we plug this in. So if we had a hard drive to put in, we'd be putting it in here. And I think there were 3 screws that held this in. So this would have gone see how we're going to do that. I can already see I'm going to have a cable management issue here. I need to wrap this cable this way. But thankfully, that's an easy connector to get to. All right. There we go. I just heard that click in. And this has to bend out of the way because remember now, if we're putting a hard drive in here, we're adding a little more cabling. And all that room we had because of this length of the cables and the number of cables this power supply has, combining with all the other motherboard cables. And then if you also add a solid state drive, you're looking at pretty tight space in there when you're done, but not terrible. So this went in, I believe, which way was it? I think it was this way. This way. You're right. You notice there's holes here. Let me show you. Hold on a second. I got a drive I can demonstrate with. Okay. If we were going to put a hard drive in here, we can put a drive in this way, right? And we lock that in using these holes right here. So the drive would have to go in like this. And then once we align it, hold on a second. If that doesn't align, that means we got the drive in upside down. Let me just check where the holes are here. Let's turn the drive this way. That looks right to me, but maybe I've got it backwards still. Let's turn it this way and see. Yeah, so now the holes align. Okay, so that's one drive. Then you could take another drive, and you see where these tabs stick up? You would then put another drive here. So you could have a total of 2 3.5-inch drives on here. And that's how you would do it. One inside, one outside. I can't emphasize enough how old this technology is and why we should be moving away from it. But if you insist, that's how you do it. And to do that, you'd use the screws here and the screws here. You'll notice there are holes here, but I suspect that's so you can slot in a 2.5-inch drive that way. So again, I like to figure this stuff out intuitively so it makes sense to me. So I'm understanding the design. Now, when it comes to putting this back in, I'm just trying to remember, how is it oriented? I think like this piece here, screwed down. I can't remember to what. I'd almost have to take the original video and look at it. Trying to see which orientation this was in. Now, normally when you build a computer, and right up here it says HDD, right up on the motherboard tray, and there's a hole for the screw right there. So that kind of answers my question. It must go in this way. And then there are 2 additional screws that we screw into the back. That's why there's 3 screws here, not 4. So these 2 screws and this screw are what secure this in position. So it's nice that they put that etching there that says HDD, so I know exactly where to put this. And I could see how, if you had 2 drives in here, you'd really have to mash down on this cable to get it out of the way. This is not as roomy as it looks now that I've had some time to really look at it. Or you'd have to route the cable straight down behind the power supply. You know, you could get it in there and get it out of the way. Now it's literally up against the back of the motherboard. Not my favorite, but it's okay. It's acceptable. So if we align this up here, and again, there doesn't appear to be anything to hold it in place for us. There's a hole right here that shows like a little hard drive, and another one right down here. So I'm guessing that's where that went. Yeah, so that means that these have, you wouldn't put it in this way, obviously, because that has to go to the back of the tray. So, see if I can align this. Again, without anything to slot it into, you just sort of have to figure it out and hold it in position, and the screws hold it in place. I really wish there were slots and tabs, that at least one, that can hold it in position and then use the screws to lock it in position. Peter VZ with a €2.90 contribution. Thank you, Peter. Ghost Shadow contributes $5. He says, loosen the motherboard plug in the cable and then remount the motherboard. You could totally do that. That's certainly, I wanted the motherboard fixed securely so I could put my weight on it, but you could go at it a different way. Let's see here. Thank you, Ghost Shadow, for your contribution. And of course, Peter VZ. Jose Lopez with a $1 super chat. Thank you, Jose. Al Perez says hello. Welcome in, Al. All right, so I got my electric driver here. We're going to start with what? I guess maybe the screw here will align the other two. You could do it either way, I suppose, but again, I need a flashlight to see what's going on in here. I've got it way too low. That's going to go. Wow, that is difficult. Plus, if you could imagine a drive or two adding weight to this. Wow. Well, at least that gives us some idea of where that's located. And now we should be able to align. Probably shouldn't have tightened that screw. It's so loose. Yeah. So right there, there's a big H. I couldn't see it before without the light, but it says H right above that screw. And it says H, I don't know if you're seeing that, right above the other screw there. Okay, so that's what the back is going to look like completed. So I could see, you know, now that I see it, a modular power supply would be helpful, but not necessary. Now, normally, at this point, we do all our cable management, right? But just to give you an idea of what this is going to look like when it's done. Remember, I said with the fan facing out, this rear panel has vents on it. I can't see myself, so give me a minute here to correct my monitor view. There I am. Okay, so this panel's... Normally, when you build a computer, you're going to build it in a day or two. I'm building several and reviewing products, and so if I save these for Friday's show, then I've been doing this for at least 3 weeks. And when I've done everything else in between, it's easy to forget where things go where or how things came apart. You shouldn't have that problem if you're just working on one project. I'm working on, well, as my friend says, I'm spinning plates. I'm working on several projects at a time, and each project is typically unique. I've never worked on this case before, but as you can see, there's vents here. And those should align so that the power supply can breathe. And that reassures me that I've oriented this in the proper direction for the case. And that's how I would have done it if I designed the case. Now, normally at this point, we zip tie everything and make it look pretty. And I will do that. However, just to give you an idea of what this will look like complete and to let you know that you don't have to, you know, if you want to work on this spaghetti mess when there's a problem or an upgrade, all the power to you, my friend. I hate this. I hate when somebody brings me a computer and it looks like this, and I will definitely not return it to them that way. But just to show you what this will look like completed. Where did this go? Here, isn't it? And again, if we were to take this case and put it face down, which looks like the orientation that'll be the easiest to work on for this case. We can set this on top, and let's assume the cable management was all done. We use these screws to secure the back to it. Now, I would hope that you tested and powered this on and made sure everything was working, that you didn't accidentally knock a cable loose before you competently secure the back onto it. Not that it's a big deal to take it off. It's just, I don't know, frustrating to undo the work you just did, redo it again. At least that's my attitude. And then we bring that up like so, right? So now everything's nice and hidden. And when you look at the front, look how clean the front looks. The only cables you see on this are the pump power and RGB light for the pump. That's it. And I've done my best to hide that cable. And of course, the hoses. Now, we still have to add the fans to the bottom. So if we put this on its back now, you'll see we've got a filter down here. And this is what I'm talking about when I talk to you guys about the filters. People forget they have these on the bottom of their case, and they suck in dirt, especially if you put fans down here or your power supply fan is down here. These fans are typically bringing air in. So what does this do? This filters air. If these fans were blowing air out, we don't filter air, we're exhausting. Why would we do that? So we have to remove this to get the fans in, and we've got these two Jonsbo fans. You see they make them in black and in white. Hopefully we have the black ones in here. And these are a reverse airflow, I believe. And they should align. Okay, do you notice how these fans on the cooler, see how they're white like that? They're luminescent, I guess. That's how you can tell that's an RGB fan. Okay, so if we were to put normal fans in that orientation down here, which way is the air going to go? Let me ask you a question. Which way does the air go on these? Are these fans bringing air in, or are these fans blowing air out? There's an easy way to tell. Those of you who've been watching my channel for a while should easily know the answer just by looking at it. Ron varnishes, the fans are blowing out. That's right. These fans right here are pushing air out the top. So imagine if we put those fans facing we have to turn them around so that we can see the RGB, so we can see the blades. Then which way is the air going? Out. So if we have these fans blowing out that way and these fans blowing out this way, it looks pretty, but there's no air in the middle. That's where you need it, right? You're pushing air out the front and the back, or the front and the bottom. Airflow should always move in one direction on your case. Regardless of your case design, regardless of the components you have, you should always be moving the air, all the fans moving the air in one direction. And this is the mess people get in when they start adding fans they don't need because they want the RGB. You have to know to buy reverse fans. You have to know these exist. And we bought them from the case manufacturers, so we know they're going to look like the marketing photo of the case, which is all I'm trying to do, is make it look like the picture on Amazon that they sell the case with. Now, this better be a black fan. It is. And I think the difference is the model. This is SL120, and then I think they have a one-letter difference for the regular orientation. But these fans blow the opposite way. This is their fan. It comes with fan screws, by the way, a little bag of fan screws. These are standard, ordinary fan screws. We've got a little piece of protected tape right here, which did not peel properly. And then we've got power and ARGB. And again, I'm looking to see if there's anything that indicates this is a reverse airflow fan. I think you just have to know from the model, which isn't even written on there, is it? Sometimes there's an arrow that shows you which the direction of the airflow is. I don't see one on here at all. Huh. Question now is, can I get that plastic off? If you don't take the plastic off, it'll start to wrinkle and turn yellow, and your parts are going to look much older than they really are. It's just there primarily to protect the logo or prevent scratches on the parts that are most visually seen. And it is meant to come off. That's why they had the peel tab. But this might have been on for some time, and now it's giving me some difficulty to remove it. You can see I'm working on it. Stuck on there pretty good. Let's quickly just take the other fan out and see if that one peels off like it should. Captain Blinsky with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Captain Blinsky. We got a little silica gel packet in there, and there's the little green pull tab that tore off on me. The idea is you peel that up before you install. And this one, when I pulled on the tab, it just broke on me. And so I'm trying to get an edge with a fingernail. There it is. Got it. Okay, again, if you leave those on, it takes away some of the shine, and it will yellow. In a year or two, it'll yellow and bubble and look terrible. So, okay, now when we look at the bottom of the case, we have the spot for the two fans, and we have to consider where these cables are coming out, and we want the fans facing, we want to be able to see these fans, right? Just the same way we can see these. If I put it in this way, you're going to see the cable. If I put it in this way, you're going to see the cable. If I put it in this way or this way, then we can bring the cables down. There's little tiny cable management slots right underneath the motherboard, just narrow enough for us to fit these. And to do that, I think we're going to have to remove these wire ties because I think they're too thick when they're tied up like this. It's a very narrow hole in the motherboard tray. Our friend Peter is going to bed. Hey, Peter, Buster. We call him Buster. Thank you for hanging out with us, Buster. If you're still there, have a good night. I know you'll tune in later. About a 9-hour time difference between us, and it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon here. So it's probably 11 o'clock at night in Scotland, I would guess. Okay, see now the cables are a lot thinner and I can fit them through much better. And the idea here is we orient these so again, we can see the blades. We want to hide the cables as much as possible. And that means I have prematurely put the back on. I'm going to have to take the back off because I still have to hook these up and I forgot. But that's not a big deal. In fact, let me go ahead and take the back off now so I can pull the cables through. I'm trying to push them in and it's a little challenging with all the cables we've got jammed in there. And this is what I'm talking about. When you're undoing work you've just done, it maddens me because it's not an efficient way to work. That gives you an idea of what this looks like. And again, with all the cables like that, that just drives me crazy. But it's hidden. You see what I'm saying? It's like what we're finding in Studio C is we tear apart walls and we find no electrical boxes where there should be and such. So let me clear this off. I have a package being delivered here. Yes. Okay, bear with me for a second. I don't want, it's, how hot is it today right now? Oh, it's only 103 degrees outside Fahrenheit. That's about 10 degrees cooler than it was the other day. But I don't like packages sitting out there in the heat. I'll be right back. My apologies for that, guy. Guys, I did not know I had a package coming, and I don't know what it is. So give me 1 second, because I'm very curious. Okay, then. I don't know. So the folks over at Ace Magic, you know, they've been struggling a little bit to rebuild confidence in their brand due to the issues they've had with malware on their the contracting company that they hired to do their installs was doing something a little funky that they didn't know. And I'm not going to excuse that. It's not their fault. I mean, they should be paying closer attention to the contractors they hire. But they didn't. I'm sure they will from now on. And so they have a new product line, and they're just trying to get past this. Obviously, they don't use that particular contractor, nor will they ever again. There's maybe some old inventory still out there, you know, where possibly these machines that were affected might still be available for sale. They probably should have done a recall on them. I think they're just learning. So in the meantime, that issue's been fixed. So anything new won't have any malware or viruses. And I realize we just took a big U-turn or big left turn on our video here, but I don't know what this is. It looks like it's a laptop of some kind. And obviously this will be a future video. I think the ASUS brand is good value. I don't think it's the best computer you can buy for the money, but let me rephrase. I don't think it's the best computer money can buy, but maybe the best computer you can buy for the money for what they're charging. So it depends where on your personal value system. For me, I have no problem with ASUS. I like them. They made a mistake. They've corrected the mistake, and now everybody's thinking that every ASUS computer is infected, and they resolved this. And again, the good news for you is in order for them to earn your confidence back, they've got to make the products even more appealing on price. So if I can get the package open, we'll see what's inside of here. This was shipped in a box, in a box, in a box. I still don't know what it is. Okay, and it's hot. It's obviously been in an unair-conditioned truck all day today. This thing is radiating heat like you wouldn't believe. Longest unboxing ever. Did they nest a bunch of boxes? Is this like Russian nesting dolls? I'm just thinking this video just went. All right. What is in here? It's an X1, apparently. It's a laptop. It's black. Ooh. What is going on here? Oh. Oh. Okay. Wow, this thing is hot. I wish you could feel this. This feels like someone set it inside of an oven for like 2 hours. Look at the unique connector there. What do you suppose that does? I'm not sure. I'll tell you what I think it is. I think another monitor slides on there. Let's see. Okay, Mara, what do you think of that? A dual monitored laptop. See, I'm telling you, ASUS has to work harder to get your attention and to lower their prices to be more aggressive so that you can trust them again. They're going to say, look, Carey, you scan this all you want. You will not find malware on it. That's how confident they are. We're going to find out in the future. We'll review this. I'm not going to turn it on. I'll save that for a future video. How you like me now, says Ace Magic. How you like me now? You know what? That malware incident may be the best thing that ever happened to them because it gave them a big, swift kick in the butt. And now they're working harder than ever to get your trust back. So if you want a good value on a machine from Ace Magic, from a machine, consider Ace Magic right now. Because once they win back your confidence, they can start raising the prices and they don't have to work as hard. Sony. Anyway, that's pretty darn cool. It's called the X1. So you can Google that if you want to learn more about it, or wait till we get to our review. It's so weird. I've never seen a laptop like that in person ever in my life. Maybe CES? Maybe. I can't remember, but yeah. I'm going to try and put this back in the box the way it was so we can do a genuine unboxing this week. But I don't need all those boxes. I only need this. The main box is all I need for the unboxing. I'll take it out of 3 boxes. So yeah, we're going to just put that back as if we never looked at it. You guys got a sneak peek, just like I did, of what's coming. Put that away. All right, Mara, time to work on the thumbnail for this video that's coming up on this Ace Magic X1. Just put this over here and put my razor away before I hurt myself. All right. Well, that was an interesting diversion in the video with the delivery. That was cool. I need to give Ace Magic the new address. All right, so we were putting fans in. I was taking the back off so I can get the wires for the fans in there. Back is off. Where did I put the back? Oh, down there. Screws are over there. Wire ties, we'll get those out of our way. Okay, so now I should be able to pull the fan wires through a lot easier. Let's see if my theory is correct. Bring this back down on its back here. Grab one of our fans. And we need to feed the fan wires in. There's a little hole right, I don't know how well you can see this. Right there. There's a hole, and then there's another one right there. And that's to help hide the cables for this clean look. So again, you don't have to do that, but then why did you bother? You know what I mean? Why have that advantage and not use it? I mean, we could also go through here, but that would be too visible, in my opinion. We want to go to the area that's closest. And also, this is a great time to make sure that the whole thing is clean that you're building, that it's not already dusty, okay? Because as you use it, it's gonna get dusty. So while you've got it open, like I'll use a microfiber cloth, keep it away from any components, although on this board, they're all covered in plastic, and just wipe away any dust. Make sure that's nice and clean because it will get dusty on its own over time. And if you clean it now, it'll take a little bit more time to, you know what I mean? It'll start clean, so it'll take more time to look dusty. So anyway. Let's see. Grab my regular screwdriver. Sometimes I get the fan screws in with a electric driver, and other times, because you're literally threading through these plastic holes, they've never had screws in them before. They don't have threads. So as you turn those thick threaded fan screws in, they carve right into the plastic. And if you start them on an angle, you don't start them straight, And for that reason, I often will not use the electric driver unless I've taken the screw out, that it's already threaded, and I'm putting the same screw back in. I can use the electric driver because now there's a thread. If you watch closely in any of my past videos, there are times when I use the electric driver, there are times when I don't when installing system fans, and that's usually an indicator of why. But it occurs to me, I don't think I've ever explained that before. So now it's buried in a 2-hour video. Good luck finding that information. All right, let's see if we can feed this through. We want to orient the fan this way. We want the wires coming out to go straight through the back. We don't want to wrap them around anything. We don't want them to be visible. And this fan, I'm setting it over here, but this fan will be on this side. And then the other hole we'll use for the other fan on the other side. But right now, I'm just trying to figure out how to get these cables in. This would have been easier to do before I put the motherboard in. So again, when you're dealing with some specialty cases, sometimes the order that you take of putting parts in can make the job easier or more difficult, but never impossible. Always a way. Just there's an easy way, there's a hard way. And if it involves me, I'm probably doing it the hard way. At least once. And then if I have to ever work on this case again, then I'll do it the easy way. Then I'll know. It's not enough for the instructions to tell me. I got to know why. So this is how I figure out why. Okay, that makes sense to me now. I get it. So these cables out of the way, I should be able to reach down, find that fan cable. This is the ARGB header. There it is. And then the fan power cable. And you'll see the fan power cable even has a male and female, so you can connect the two fans together. You can connect the two RGB connectors from one fan to the other, and then take one master power cable to plug in and one master ARGB cable to plug in. So that's thoughtful. I appreciate that consideration. And I mean, with the motherboard in place, this isn't that difficult to fish the wire through. It just maybe it should have been done first. In retrospect, when I had the case apart, I should have put these in the very first thing. There would have been nothing in our way. Now, that made it complicated putting the motherboard in because now there's a ridge here, but I don't think that would have been too difficult compared to this. So we make sure we pull our cables all the way taut, get that fan where we want it, and then we can tilt this up and secure the fan in position. So here we've got the bag of screws and another bag of screws. Use the included screws. Ron Barnish says Ace Magic has that laptop on sale right now for $899 on pre-order, and then its regular price is $1,499. Well, we're going to find out, aside from the two screens, Ron can tell us what's the processor, RAM, and storage on it. Is it Intel? Is it AMD? I have no idea. You'll have to tell me. Notice the big slot here, and that's so you can adjust the fans, because you may not be using Jonsbo fans. We are. So a lot of case manufacturers, they fix the locations of the holes and say, you know, that's what it's got to be. And the other reason they do this is the potential, if you wanted to put a liquid cooler down here, your radiator, potentially. See how that can slide? That's usually why they do that, but haven't read the directions. I don't know. But that looks like a liquid cooler radiator could go right there. 1 screw, 2 screws, 3 screws, 4. Yeah. The 240 millimeter. I'm going to leave this a little bit loose because I want to see how the next fan align. Well, actually, no, I think we'll be okay. What I'm going to do is just align and center. It's not like you can see it from the bottom anyway. I want it as symmetrical as possible to the other fan. So I am concerned about tightening these down too much. I think we'll be okay if we tighten them. Right about. No, I'm going to leave it loose because I don't know how close the other fan's going to get, if there'll be a gap or they'll be right up against each other. In other words, if I move this fan as far to this side as possible, am I then limiting the access of putting in the next fan? I don't know. So I'm going to leave it loose until I know. These are the first time building, discoveries that we make with each new case we work on, where the design is very, very different from what we're accustomed to. So the first build is always a little sloppy. If I say sloppy, it's you don't know what you're doing. You're right. I've never worked on this case. I'm not reading the directions, but I'm going to figure it out. And then once I learn that way, for me, if I ever see another one of these cases, I remember, hopefully, if it hasn't been too long, and it'll make it look like it was nothing. And people go, wow, you did that like it was nothing because they didn't see the struggle part. How do you know so much about computers? I struggled, and through the struggle, I learned. And then it has the appearance after the struggle that, wow, you're really good at what you do. It's like, you have no idea what I had to do to get here. And then you got people who know the theory, but they've never done it, right? They've read all the books, and they think they know how to do it, but they've never actually done it. So given the choice of those two techs, I'll take the one who's actually done it over the one who just has the theory. I know the instructions by heart, so I can work on this because I already know in my head how to do it. I'd rather deal with somebody with experience. But that's me. So again, figure out which way we want these wires to go. For this scenario, the hole is down on this side, so to make the cables as hidden as possible, we're going to install in this direction. I'll just set this here for now so I can run those cables through. There's one. Oh, and it's right under the power supply. See, this is, remember when I mentioned when you install a power supply, you want to make sure that you've got everything hooked up and not, this is going to cover a lot of access. So where we're trying to get our cable through is right through the bottom, which we can do. It's just a little more difficult with the power supply in the way. And that's why having the power supply come in and out easier would have been very welcome in this case design. I'm reluctant to take the power supply out because it's such a pain in the butt to put back. It's not the end of the world. It's not that big of a deal that I'm making it. Remember, these fans aren't even needed. We're going through all this additional work for two reasons. One, I didn't know I should have done it first. That's the main reason. And two, it's for the RGB that we don't need. So it's really an aesthetic thing that we're doing here. And it's adding a lot of additional time to this build as well as money, just so we have that look. And you know what? It's important to some people. Yeah. So this power supply, I think, is going to have to come out because I'm having trouble getting the connector all the way through. This way. Maybe I can get it. Oh, I got it. Okay, good. And then we've got the ARGB header or wires that go to the header or go to other ARGB wires, depending on how you wire it. Again, that's going under the power supply, and I'm fishing for it under here. I think I found it. Yeah, I did. Now we can pull these taut, set this in place where we want it. Perfect. Perfect. I mean, I still may have to take the power supply out to hook these up. I don't know yet. We'll find out in a minute when we get there. Let's secure this fan first. Once I've got this fan locked in, then I'll lock the other one in. All right, the X1 laptop has 16 gigs of RAM, a 1 terabyte NVMe solid state drive. It's an Intel Core i7 1255U. Okay, so that should be a new Meteor Lake. Interesting. Well, hopefully you guys will join me when we review that. I know we're right at about 2 hours now, aren't we? Yeah, just hit the 2-hour mark. We're almost done. We're going to go a little over today so we can finish this. That's why I'm not going to do the cable management on it. I don't have time, but I'll do that off camera one of these days. So you see how I'm putting this fan right up against the other fan. Worried. See this? I don't know if this is wiggling as much as it did. It's physically hitting the other fan if I push it all the way this way. And my concern was if I pushed it all the way this way and locked it in, that this fan wouldn't fit anymore. So that's why I kept it loose. And I know I explained it, but now I wanted to show you. I'm kind of pinching them together, and I think that's the best way to align them. The other way to align them would be to just try and get that hole centered. Like that. And then lock one in. Have it centered. I feel like it doesn't have to be that precise. If people were looking at it from the bottom, this would matter more. Any of the positions they lock into will probably be fine from the top view. Don't over tighten the fan screws. You will strip them out. Like I said, they are threading into plastic. So once they stop, don't take it any further. If you have rubber grommets, don't crush the grommets so they're flat. They're there to reduce vibration. So you want that rubber grommet to be fluffy and absorb any vibration which creates noise. So on fans that have those grommets where they have rubber corners, don't squish them too hard, or you reduce the absorption of vibration and noise by doing that. Sort of defeats the purpose of the grommet. I should probably have my glasses on. Been doing pretty good without them today. Okay. Those are in, and we just have to wire them up. Then we can put the covers on, turn this thing on, and we should be done. Minus, I guess, activating Windows and cable management. But from the outside appearances, it'll look done. So here we've got our fan cables, right? So what we can do with these is we can plug one ARGB header into another. So right down here, all four of these are for those two fans. One for power to each fan, that's 2 wires. One for RGB to each fan, that's 2 wires. We can take one power connector and plug it into another power. Basically, plug one fan into the other. What we would call a serial connection. And I do need my glasses on because this, when everything is black, you need a lot of light. And then on top of that, I'm dealing with little tiny pins. And those little small things, that's what I'm having trouble seeing. Small fonts. Put a small font in a dark room. Yeah, I'm definitely going to need glasses and a flashlight. I'm sure many of you out there can relate. So basically, we plug one fan into the other. Okay. And then we have one power connector left, and we can just find any power connector here on the back of the board for a fan. Now, obviously, if there's one at the bottom, that would be preferred. It's just hard to see down there. Yeah. So you can see how the power supply is kind of in the way of this. Not kind of, it's totally in the way. But we have a fan connector down here we can use. And I think we have an ARGB down there, don't we? Maybe? Whoops. Back up here. Get back up here. No. Yeah, I'm going to take the power supply out. This is just too difficult with it in there like that. This should be the last component you put in, as I mentioned, and I just forgot we had to put the fans in. Got ahead of myself. So remember, there's nothing supporting this power supply when I take that fourth screw out. And I want to keep these screws separate from those other screws. So I think I'll just put them... Watch, I won't find them later. Okay. So now with the hard drive cage there, it does help guide this power supply in with that blocking us from going too high on the install. But let's go ahead and remove it. Now I will say when the power supply is in, we still have access. It's just, you know, to these connectors down here, it's just maybe an inch of access there. So it's a bit tight. And the other thing I'm concerned about is that when I ran these cables that I might have wound them through others like I just did there. And then that means when I go to do the cable management, I'm gonna have to take it all back apart to undo where cables are interwoven or twisted. So that's an ARGB plug right there. And we can plug all the ARGB plugs in together. Watch this. Gotta disconnect this for a minute. Let's run this cable underneath everything else. Okay, so I'm twisted. So we pick one of the ARGB, we've got a male and a female, and the male's covered with a little plug right here. You take that little plug off. That's the male. And they do that so the pins don't ground out against the case or get bent. So if you're going to keep it permanently, you can throw these little caps away. But if you're going to, eventually you're going to have one on the end that you need to cover up. And if you don't have the little caps, you can just use electrical tape or something to cover them, just to keep them from grounding out. But any ARGB headers you have, like for example our cooler, can plug into another. Okay, so as we look at this, we have another male right here, and we can use the female and plug these two in. This should be coming off of our liquid cooler, right? Then we only need one ARGB plug on the board, and then each thing plugs into the next, like Christmas lights. Now this one, the male end, can go to the other fan, which is right here, into that female connector. So now both fans have ARGB, and then we have to plug, because this pulled out by mistake when I was pulling the power supply out. This will go back where it was originally on the ARGB header on the board down here, which is right there. This can be a little tricky to put on. You'll know when you've got it. There it goes. Okay, so that controls all of our ARGB. That's the big dust cover they had on the ARGB header on the pump. And that's the same thing basically on the fans. And we don't need those, right? Because we're all plugged in there. And then we have one left over, and that one's covered. So that's if you want to keep adding more ARGB stuff. You could just keep stringing them along indefinitely, I guess. Now, the power to the fans, I had to unplug them to straighten and undo the tangle. One fan can, if you want to, plug into the other one, which is what I want to do. And then, because I want both fans to run at the same speed. I don't want them plugged into separate headers and the motherboard is saying that fan's running at one speed and the other fan's running at a different speed. It's going to look funny. So by plugging them in together, it ensures they run at the same speed. We want this on radiators and we want this on visual aesthetics. Typically, like on a CPU fan, you want the speed to slow down and speed up as needed. But in the case of synchronizing these fan speeds, that would be done where fans are working together. You want both fans to run the same speed, typically. I should say that's what I want. I don't know what you want. But now I can much easier access the plug down there. And then we can, again, we got to cable manage all this, okay? But for now, I'll just cram it all in there. Supply back in. Sure. That'll be easy. Come on. You were in before. I know you can do it. Something's blocking us. What is it? Looks like this ribbon cable is in our way. So we either have to run that straight down or we have to run it. To me, it should run that way. Now there's a little lip right there. Maybe the power supply rests on that lip. I don't know. This cable is definitely going to be in the way. And that's where cable management is going to come in handy, so you don't have to do that by hand like I'm doing it and struggle. Working way too hard for this. See, without cable management, you know, what you have to do to sort of wiggle everything in, it's almost more work to not do the cable management because of this type of situation where the cables are blocking. And if you force it, you might be pinching a cable that over time you end up breaking through the insulation and shorting it out. I still feel like this particular cable right here is the one that keeps interfering. Just trying to figure out a way to hold it up and out. Something now blocking us this way. Okay, I think maybe that'll get it. No, still something is blocking us. There's something preventing us from sitting flat. It looks like this audio cable. It looks like I have two particular cables, the audio, front port audio, and then this is probably what? I don't know. Something's going up that way. I think that'll do it. Just hope I'm not pinching any cables. And again, without anything to hold the power supply for us, it makes it very difficult. And I suppose in retrospect, maybe a modular power supply after all would be ideal for this build because all the other cables, you know, they take up so much room. Yeah, I'm not able to get that lined up. There's still something blocking us down here. That's frustrating. I still think it's this audio cable. Not quite sure what to do about that. There it goes. There it goes. So with all the cables managed, I would not struggle that much. But cable management takes time, and I'm trying to rush this through because we're already past time. And I want to just put it all together and turn it on and see a final product. I don't want to go to a part 4. Okay? That's ridiculous. Okay. This case isn't that different. It's different. It's not that different. Okay, so with that back on, now we should test fire it, make sure everything works. But I'm just going to be like, heck with it. Let's just slap it together and see what happens. So I'm going to turn this way for 2 reasons. One, to work with gravity to get this mass of cables from our power supply just up and out of the way. Okay? And be careful when you do this. Again, you don't want to accidentally unplug any of the front panel umbilicals, but I just want to slap this in here sloppily so I can just show you what it looks like when it's done. And you and I will know the secret that it's not really done until the cable management's finished. So I'm just going to hold that. That shouldn't be pushing up, right? If your cables are managed, this will sit flush and you won't have to fight it like an overfilled suitcase. One, two. Not lined up right. There it goes. 3, 4. Okay. We've got to put the filter back on down here. I mean, you guys can see that okay. Only goes on one way. I had it right the first time. No. There's only 4 ways this can go on, so it's got to be this way. I'll tell you, Jonsbo could have taken a little more care to help us guide that in the right orientation. There's no way you're going to clean that without tilting the computer. You're not going to just lift under and pull this filter out like you can in some cases. You will have to flip this, preferably on the metal side, not on the glass. We don't have the glass in, so that's why I'm doing it that way for right now. But that's not how I'll do it once the glass is in place. Now I have the screws I took out from there, right? That took us nowhere. I need to put those back in. Oh, I only have 2 screws. So those, I believe, went... Oh. Open the back. Can't remember. Okay, and then I can put the top back on, which I set down here. That's going to just snap in place. Paul Gray with a $20 Australian contribution. Right on. Thank you, Paul. See, it's coming together. See? I think just the glass now. So let me grab that. Now, you wouldn't want to break this glass. It's pretty customized. Yeah, so the hole up here where I thought the screw went, that's the screw that holds the glass on. So let me go back over here. Thank you to Peter VZ for your €1 contribution. Go back here. Let's turn this back around this way. And now this piece of glass go on just like this. Once again, it doesn't look like anything holds the glass in place other than screws. And it looks like the glass sticks out. It doesn't go under the metal, but on top of it. These are little details that if you're not paying attention when you take it apart, could throw you, certainly throw me, putting it back together. I see some supports down here, but I don't really see anything that, yeah, there's just this little lip down here that holds the bottom of the glass. So they do have a little help for you. And then you've got the rubber grommets because you don't want to screw you don't want to put a screw through glass and then potentially crack it. You want to put the screw through something rubber, so when you're tightening the screw down, don't over tighten and crack this glass. Okay, but that rubber grommet is there to cushion, so it gives you a lot of leeway for how tight those screws are. They don't need to be that tight. Once you feel them start to snug up, that's it. That's all you need. So I should have those screws in this box. That's where I should have put them if I did everything the correct way. And if we want to save these dust covers, I mean, you can, or you can throw them away. That's really up to you. And in the box where we put all of our spare parts, do I have the screws for the glass? They would be loose. They wouldn't be in a bag. I had to put them somewhere. Are these them? Can't be. Are they? Normally, I'd have to go back and watch part 1 to see what I did with the screws. I might have put them in a bag like this, but there's extra rubber grommets. There are 4 screws in here. This looks like extras. So my question is, where are the original ones? Where did I put them? They should be in the box, but I don't see any loose screws in the box. So again, if you start breaking up your build over the course of weeks instead of days, it's very easy to become a little confused with where things were left. I try to keep everything together just for this predicament. But for now, I'm going to use these screws because these might be the ones. Again, I'd have to go back and watch. Thank goodness I record what I do. I'd be in big trouble. Then I'd really be figuring it out. But these are very different type of a screw. It's got a fat head on it there with a slotted screwdriver. You probably shouldn't need to use a screwdriver. Those shouldn't be that tight. Just line it up. And once you feel that grommet, that rubber start to squish, stop. That's where you want to be. This is not airtight. You don't have to tighten it down super tight. It's just holding the glass in place. I felt that grommet start to squish. I gave it just a little bit more, probably too much, honestly. You're better off looser than tighter when it comes to tightening the glass on a case. Again, Jonsbo doesn't give us any guide for the power supply, for the hard drive cage, or for the glass. So it's really just the screws that lock it into its position with no supporting guides. Now, if we did everything correctly, and you should be testing as you go along, but if we did everything correctly, we should be able to hook up HDMI, Ethernet, power. Notice the power is recessed inside the case a bit there, so make sure you have a power cable that is straight. If you have it angled, it may not fit. Turn the power supply on. We still need to add a keyboard and a mouse, but just to see if it turns on, got our RGB going, and again, there's RGB at the top. Okay, and then we go over to the lights. We'll turn the lights off. Tough to see the top and bottom fans at the same time. Plus, we're getting a lot of reflection off the monitor. Now, let me switch over to the HDMI input. Let's see if this thing even booted. But hopefully, if we did everything right. Yes, yes, we did. Yay, I don't have to take it back apart other than cable management. See, a lot of people might just say that's good enough and keep the computer that way. We do have a notice to activate Windows down here, which I've not done yet. You should have internet access. Oh, I'm using the wrong mouse. I haven't hooked up the keyboard and mouse. Let me grab my keyboard and mouse and plug that in right now. In fact, I'm going to plug in the dongle to the front USB port as a way of testing it to make sure that that works. But that's not where I would keep it because I only have one, and I would want that available for flash drives on, an as-needed basis. Okay, does that work? Okay, that's our front USB port working. So does the internet work? Hate the setup. It just really, really gets under my skin. You're like, geez, Carey, this whole video got under your skin. All right, internet's working. Computer's quiet. We could certainly run some tests on it, like grab my utilities flash drive here. Did we get all the drivers installed in this? Go to our device manager, make sure there's, yeah, we've got everything, all the drivers when we prep the board. That's good. So let me go to my flash drive and let's take, Crystal Disk Mark. I want VLC. Let's throw that on there. And we want Uncle Carey's Windows 10 optimizer, even though this is Windows 11. It works. I don't think it does as much for Windows 11 because Microsoft fixed some of the issues with Windows 11 that Windows 10 optimizer was addressing, but it doesn't hurt to run it. Just don't know that it makes as big of a difference with performance as it does on Windows 10, which wasn't that much to begin with. Okay, so VLC is installed. Now let's grab, let's see, Cinebench. PC testing software. There it is. Cinebench R23 is a big one. That over. CPU. Look how fast the USB is moving. Happy with that. HW1. Crystal Disk Mark portable. Okay, so that's our standard round of testing. Let's see how this thing does with Crystal Disk Mark first and foremost. And let me get rid of the flash drive. Let's just pull it out. Good enough. Bring up Crystal Disk Mark. Should run the optimizer first. Well, I'm going to let that run. I'm going to get a cold drink. I guess it's Gatorade time for me. Oh, that's a really good speed. We must have put a Beijing in there. Yeah, I'm happy with that. The Greenie says this is why I like the Leon Lee fans. They daisy chain together using one cable to the controller. So they copied ASUS, is what it sounds like. Remember when we built the red streamer behind me, how the fans they connected together? That's the ASUS $400 liquid cooler with the big screen on it. Peter says you can adjust the optimizer in software to create a Windows 11 optimizer. Yeah, I don't think it's worth all the effort. I mean, the time and energy to take to, it's not hurting anything. And I'm not aware of any other optimizations on Windows 11 that we're missing. So the main functions of turning off indexing and the hibernation file and stuff, having that automated for me is quite useful in my business. I never made the optimizer for people to buy it. It was for me personally. I was paying to have it developed so I could use it with faster and more consistent result to the PC builds I do, that they would all be configured the same. And viewers said, hey, can we buy that? And then that's how that all happened. So it was never my intention to get into the software business. It just kind of happened. So I'm still not wanting to put a lot of time or energy in that, given everything we've got going on right now. Shutting down Studio B, starting up Studio C, plus all the builds we have to do in the meantime. It's a lot. But maybe in the future, we'll see. Craig Casavona with a $20 super chat says, I just built an Intel 14700K processor with an ASRock Z790 Pro RS Wi-Fi 6E and an ASUS Super 4070 GPU NVIDIA. Nice to see you live. That sounds like a rockin' system. There have been a lot of people concerned that the Intel 13th and 14th gen CPUs are all defective, and they're not. Some people have asked what my opinion on that is. And of course, I don't like it. But I've yet to see one fail in real life. I hear about it all the time on the internet. Most of my customers are not gamers, and the people it seems to be affecting mainly are gamers. And that may be why I'm not seeing any fail. I'm not using them in that way. There is a microcode update that Intel is releasing that's going to address the issue for any 13th and 14th gen CPUs that are not already been damaged. That should prevent the damage. And that will be in the form of a BIOS update. So be sure you always have the latest BIOS update on your 13th and 14th gen Intel chips. Check it regularly, once a month, once every week. Because if your chip doesn't have damage, putting the BIOS update on will ensure or reduce the likelihood of damage. And Intel's not real positive. This is a combination of a couple of potential issues that are causing the problem, whether it's oxidation, overvoltage, etc. So this fixes the overvoltage for a main part of the chip. And that BIOS update should be out soon. But again, I have not seen any 13th or 14th gen CPUs that are bad. So my feeling on it is, people can talk all day on the internet. Show me. Get one and show it to me. It's not that I don't believe you. It's just that it's not every chip that's bad. That's all I'm trying to say. The odds of you having a bad one, it could be as low as 1 in 100 or 1 in 10, 1 in 1,000. I don't know, but it's not like 990 out of 1,000. It's not like that. Otherwise, we'd have been seeing it. You're seeing these videos live, and I think that we have an Intel processor in here too. I go to right click on my system properties, just as a reminder what we installed. An i5 14600K and 32 gigs of DDR5 RGB RAM running Windows 11 Pro 23H2. Now, I really wanted to test the Jonsbo cooler. So we know more or less what to expect out of the Feijing 2 terabyte drive. It's a great high value, high performance Gen 4 drive, right at the top end of Gen 4, but without the name brand. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, I have installed somewhere around 18 of these drives. Nothing's gone bad so far. They run no differently than Samsung or Western Digital or any other name brand, but they're less price. In fact, they're using the same chips on the board as the big guys. So why not save money? Unless you really want the support. Because when you buy SanDisk or Western Digital or Seagate, that extra money goes towards support. But if they're never going bad, what do you need support for? So we'll say Crystal Disk Mark, and we'll save that to the desktop. That screen is way too far away for me to read. Don't mind me while I struggle to see what you're probably sitting right in front of your monitor. I'm 10 feet away from mine, so bear with me. I'm going to leave the optimizer off for right now. Let's just jump right into hardware info. Let's see what temperature we've got going on here. you know, just using the computer, what I would say normally, right? I'm not doing any video rendering or anything like that. So what are our temps just under normal email browsing? They should be awesome. Let's see. Are they awesome? Oh, yeah, that's good. You're in the 30s. Some of you are probably in the 50s or 60s on idle. So to be down into the 30s like that, that's what I want to see. Okay, so let's start Cinebench, which is an extreme synthetic benchmark. And let's see how hot this gets. Now remember, this cooler probably would be ideal for a 14900 or 13900K. We only have a 14600K, which should not get anywhere near as hot. But the keyword is should not. Will it? There's only one way to know. Try it and see. Every chip is different. No two chips are the same. So let's see how this one's doing. We're going to watch our core temperatures. This is the current. Oh, those fans just kicked up big time. Holy cow. Sounds like someone started up like a, what do you call those filters? The HEPA filters in a room? That's what it sounds like. It's not real loud, but it does sound like somebody just turned on a HEPA filter. So these are our current temperatures, and you see they're going to vary a lot depending on what the test is doing. And then on the right side, these are our maximum temperatures going down this side. And this, we want to watch how hot it's getting. Now it looks like I've seen a max of 95, which is that right? Did it get that hot? Boy, the 95 puts us right at the edge. Now, there's two reasons that can be happening. One, I need to check to see if my PL1 and PL2 settings in the BIOS are set to the Intel standard. And two, because I moved motherboards, I didn't change the thermal compound because we're putting the same cooler back on the same chip. It was brand new. It's possible that I'm losing a couple of degrees of efficiency by simply not wiping and reapplying thermal paste. I don't think so, but I have to acknowledge that's possible. So I'm going to stop this test. We don't need to go any further through this because I'm seeing temperatures I don't like. So I want to go into the BIOS real quick. Give this a second to cool back down. You don't want to shut it off when it's boiling hot and then, you know, just let it sit there. Let the fans do their job and just bring it down for a minute. And then what we'll do is close everything out and then restart into the BIOS. Start. Come on, start. Is my start button not working? I did hear about a Windows update that has this effect. So what we'll do instead, maybe we can just search. No, that won't work either. So we'll hit Control-Alt-Delete. We'll go to the task. Oh, we don't even have to do that. Right down here, we can restart this way. There it is. That's what I was looking for. That's just another tip from your Uncle Carey. There's our friend Frankie B joining us from New York in the chat room. $4.99 super chat. Right on. Thank you, Frankie, as always. Okay, I'm going to start hitting the delete key over and over and over again right now before the logo appears. And hopefully that will... No, I missed it. Whoopsie. Bajin guy said there were a couple of 96-degree temps too. Yeah, well, thanks for letting me know. All right, so start button work now? Okay. The other way, if you're having difficulty getting in your BIOS, go to Windows Update, go to Advanced Options, go to Recovery, go to Advanced Startup, Start Now. So it's going to restart in the advanced mode, meaning you're going to get a different menu. And one of those options is to boot into the BIOS so you don't have to press any keys or worry, is it the right key at the right time? Some people really struggle with that. And this is just another way that's possible with UEFI BIOSes, which everybody should have now. So you'll notice there's continue to Windows 10, use a device, troubleshoot. Well, we want troubleshoot, and we want advanced options. So we want the advanced options inside the advanced startup. Right here on the right side in the middle, it's always in the same place, UEFI firmware settings. It says, okay, you want to restart to your BIOS? Yes, that's what that basically means. UEFI firmware and BIOS are sort of interchangeable words. So feel free to say it either way. Now with the hands off, me touching nothing, this is going to restart into the computer BIOS. And let's check and see where our PL1 and PL2 are. So you notice we're not monitoring the CPU fan because we have an all-in-one pump. And it recognizes the pump down here. And then the fans on the radiator are probably chassis 1 fan, and the fans down below are chassis 3. It only sees 2 fans because we've got each fan plugged into the other, I believe. So that's why they only appear, 2 appear as 1. Okay, so we want to look at, I guess it's going to be under advanced settings. We could also look for a newer BIOS. We're at 1661, which last week or whenever we worked on this was the latest. There could be another new one. I don't know. Now we'll go to advanced mode, and under advanced CPU is under CPU performance, and we're looking for PL1 and PL2 settings. I'm not seeing it. Every BIOS is different. You know, when you go from ASUS to ASRock to Gigabyte to MSI, it's really hard to remember where they put stuff, at least for me. I don't think the AI tweakers. Oh, maybe it is. Okay. Long duration, that's going to be our PL2. Where's our short duration or PL1? No, sorry, long duration. Long duration would be PL1. Like ASRock, you tell it what kind of cooler you've got, right? And you'd think ASUS would have something similar. And maybe they do and I'm not seeing it. Performance, Intel default advanced overclock. So you think Intel default PL1 and PL2 are set within Intel's recommended parameters. What does that mean? What are those parameters? Can you tell me? Hmm. It really feels like it's outside of the parameters if it's getting that hot, or our cooler isn't working very well. Which one is it? So if I don't have the cooler on correctly, it's hard to tell without taking it off and then reattaching it. If we don't have enough thermal compound, we could have this kind of problem. If the cooler just isn't a good cooler, we could have this problem. I'm giving Jonsbo the benefit of the doubt that it's a good cooler. I'm giving myself the benefit of the doubt that I've installed it correctly with thermal compound being fine. So what I'm blaming it on right now, in the first place I'm looking, is in the power management, or of the CPU for our power level 1 and power level 2 settings, and I can't see where they are. I just see Intel default, but that doesn't tell me what does that mean? We never had to do this on Intel chips or even AMD chips until basically the 13th gen is where things got messy. Or socket 1700 in general, so that would include 12th gen. I don't see any other place to find this. That's the only place I found is just this setting here, which is very vague. I just don't know how they're defining that. You'd think down here at the bottom, it would give us the information, you know, of what it's setting it to, but I don't know what it's set to. Long duration package power limit is on auto. What does that even mean, auto? Okay, so that's our PL1 and short duration is PL2. And it shows it's at 181 watts. But here's the problem. The PL1 and PL2 of 14600K are not both 181 watts. There's no way. That's not the recommended settings. I don't know why ASUS has put it in over. Okay, let me just show you. Let's just leave it like it is for right now. Let's get out of here. Quit without saving, that's fine. Let me get back into Windows and let me do this research on this and show you what the PL1 and PL2 should be. Then we'll go back into BIOS and we'll set those to those limits, and then we'll run the Cinebench test again. So if we look at search engine here, let's just go to Google. And we'll say PL1, PL2, 14600K. Now, this person said they set it to 125 on both. That sounds right to me. That's on a 14900. 14600 is what I'm interested in. And we can find out direct from Intel. Here's the specs here from Tech Power Up. I trust them. TDP is 125. Oh, I'll be darned. Look at this. For performance, it says 181 and 181. So ASUS did set it for performance. Yet we are running hot. So is it that we're pushing 181? Or is it because the cooler's not that good? Or maybe I didn't install a cooler properly. I'm sure when we run hardware info, it's going to show 181 on the PL1 and PL2. Because if you look down here, just look where it says watts. PL1 power limit 181. So that matches what the BIOS says. And then this is, you know, current, minimum, and maximum right in this window down here, right? PL1, this line, PL1 and PL2. Okay, that's what it's set to, the first number. And that's what we're using. And then the next is the minimum. Sorry, this is the minimum. This is the maximum. This says current. So it's locking in at 181. Gosh, that seems awfully high to me. So just for giggles, and I realize we will lose some performance, but it's such a minor difference in performance. We increase in efficiency. What we lose in performance, we increase in efficiency, right? So if you want to be more green-minded, more ecology-minded, see if I can get back in the BIOS this time. Yeah, there's our Beijing S882 terabyte. Nice that it recognizes that in the BIOS. All right, so we'll go back to advanced mode. And then where were we? We were at AI tweaker. And then somewhere in here, where was it? Here? Yeah. So it says 181 watts. Let's change that to 135 and do the same thing on the short. We'll change that to 135. I know 125 is what some people are saying, but That may be even a bit. You know what? Let's split the. Let's say, and again, we're just dealing in such small increments here. Let's cut it down to 150. Let's do that. And then let's exit, save, and reset. So there's our changes. So we're only dropping it by 31 watts on the high and the low end. And let's see what difference that makes in our max temperatures, if any. So you've got a whole show. We got two shows, part 1 and part 2. And in this case, a part 3, just building the machine. And as you can tell, you can have a whole nother part 1 and part 2 in the configuration and testing for just one computer. Think about that. All right, we're going to bring up hardware info again. And it should reflect the changes we made. Scroll down here. PL1, PL2, set at 150, okay. Then we'll bring up Cinebench. And we'll start our torture test again. Watch these temperatures up here, see what happens. Now, depending on which chip you have and which cooler you have and which motherboard BIOS you have, you always want the latest. These may be adjusted for you, or you might be having an overheating situation when the system's pressed this hard. If you're not having any overheating situation, there's nothing for you to fix. Just because you have a 13th or 14th gen Intel chip doesn't mean you're going to have this problem. It depends on your motherboard, your BIOS, and your cooler, okay? So what I've done is I have manually brought the voltage down a little bit. And yes, you lose a little bit of performance. However, it's so little. You know, when you're dealing in these thousands of megahertz, to lose even 100 or 200 hertz is really, it doesn't hurt at all. It's barely noticeable other than in benchmarks and extreme power users. And what I can do is I can tune this, because you can see I'm reaching close to what I feel comfortable at 85. So far, we've got 84C is our maximum. There, it just hit 85. Now look, if this thing doesn't go any higher than 85, then I nailed it. Like, that's the perfect wattage for me in this cooler, in this chip, in this case. On the other hand, if this jumps to 86 or higher, I can lower that voltage. Again, it's going to reduce performance a little bit, increases efficiency. When you get a car that's a high-performance car, do you think it's going to get good gas mileage? So yeah, you can tune your car to get a few extra horsepower, but if you already have 500 horsepower and now you're going to go to 510 and you're going to spend all this money to do it and your gas mileage is going to go lower, so the expense continues the longer you own the car and have to put fuel in it, you're continuing to pay for that extra 10 horsepower. Will you even notice that when you're driving? Or are you just putting the car on a meter, you know, running the wheels and checking what the horsepower is and just, you know, believing what it tells you is true? I mean, it's fine if that's what you want to do. I find that to be a bit of madness. Now, if your car was 10 horsepower and you did that to add 500, different story. But going from 500 to 510 is such a minor, relatively unnoticeable increase. Why go through the time and trouble? Now, I see performance core number 5 hit 86. And I'll be honest, I think 86 is fine, okay? It's just 1 degree Celsius over my personal, I like to have at least 10, 15 degrees of headroom. And this is an extreme synthetic benchmark that does not represent actual work. It really doesn't. This represents extreme work that very few users actually run their computers this hard for this long. So the idea is, if your computer can run this thing and not have an overheating issue, then there's nothing you can do to it that's going to cause a problem, right? So this isn't really about getting the lowest temperature possible. This is about testing extreme use case scenarios by your customer to avoid a support call. That's all this is for me anyway. So if we're at 85, 86, I'm fine with it. You think my customer's going to notice what wattage their CPU is running at? Never. Never happened in my 30 plus year career. This is an enthusiast activity. Now, I will say there are actual, real users that use very, very resource intensive applications. But if you're regularly running resource intensive applications that are causing your CPU to go, we were in the 30-degree idle range, right? And it jumped an additional 60 degrees, then you have underbought. In other words, you're pushing a CPU harder than what it was designed to do. And what you should have done is you should have bought a better CPU. So you're not working it as hard. And that CPU, like if you're constantly pushing your CPU so hard that the temperature's up in the 80s and 90s or worse, you underbought. You should have bought a higher end CPU. Or you're overclocking it, in which case turn your overclocking off. Or you don't care. You want the best performance possible, even if the fans get noisy, you lose your efficiency, and you degrade the silicon on the chip so it won't last as long, but you're only going to keep it for 2 years anyway, so who cares? You're going to upgrade every year or 2 years. If you're that kind of a power user with that kind of a budget and those kind of demands, then you've got the money to back it up. There's not one answer that fits everybody here. But the one thing I can tell you is, unless you're having a problem, you don't have anything to worry about. So when you're reading about all these other people complaining, they aren't the majority of owners. Number one, they also don't behave like the majority of owners who wouldn't go online and complain. Also, we don't know what they've done to the chip or how good they are as far as their assembly process. And if they built it correctly, we also don't know if they overclocked it, took it to extremes. We don't know how capable they are as individuals, that they didn't just jump on a bandwagon that somebody else started. And through their own ignorance, instead of realizing they screwed something up, they're blaming the chip. There's a lot of that happening. So if you are having, if you want to run this test on your computer and you have a 13th or 14th gen chip and it's getting over 90 degrees Celsius, but you don't normally run your computer that hard, there's nothing for you to fix. It's fine. You just went looking for a problem. But if that really bothers you and you want to replace your cooler or you want to go in your BIOS and make those changes so that you can run this test without hitting, 90 degrees, that's up to you. But if you're not hitting 90 degrees, there's nothing for you to do. You don't have any problem. And you probably didn't have any problem before anyway. People are obsessed. And in the meantime, as I mentioned earlier, they might have a power supply that's completely suffocated from a dust filter that hasn't been cleaned in years, and it's boiling hot. And it never even occurs to them to check their power supply for clearance or to check the power supply's temperature. Rarely do you ever see that discussion. I don't know. I just feel like they can't see the forest through the trees. Those fans are really, like I said, it sounds like an air purifier running. But we're still seeing a max of 86. There's only 2 minutes left to go. And what the heck, we'll run the other single core test for 10 minutes. This video is going to run long today, but you know what? That's my late fee. You get bonus footage. Someone's asking about the USB drives I use. The software would be illegal for me to copy it and sell it to you. That would be completely illegal. The only software that I can offer you is the software that I created, or that I created with the help of D7X Tech. They did the work. It's my concept, right? It's my tool, my design, but they did the actual work. That's mine. I could sell that. I can give that away. I can do what I want with it. CPU-Z and Crystal Disk Mark and HW Info, Cinebench, these are all free downloads for you to go online and download and create your own. If I did that for you, I could be fined or penalized as a business. As a friend doing it for another friend, that's not running a business. So you're not profiting from it. Nobody's ever going to know. But on a big scale, if I offered a flash drive with these utilities that I don't have permission to distribute, and then I made profit off of their utilities, how would you feel if you wrote a utility and then I took it and sold it where you were giving it away for free? You'd probably be really mad at me, and you might even get a lawyer and say all the money that I collected belongs to you, plus penalties, interest, royalties, etc. So for that reason, you need to just simply type in the name of the tool in Google, and the first link you see will be the download link for HW Info, for CPU-Z, for Crystal Disk Mark, even for Cinebench R23. They're not difficult. A simple Google search will take you to every one of these tools. They are all free, but I cannot distribute them. That's completely illegal. Okay, just to clarify why we don't do that. It's not just because. If I could, I would. Ooh, we hit 91. Holy cow. This is the actual benchmark, and then that's our score. We'll give it a minute to cool down. Watch these temperatures. Look at the extreme difference between the high and the low here. Let's go ahead and start the final test, which is single core. The fans got nice and quiet. And now the fans ramp up almost immediately on the radiator. Oh, now they've quieted down. Yeah, I don't know if it's the cooler, to be honest. I think I should reseat the cooler, and we'll have to do that on another video another day. Now, Trevor Dunn says I should set the PL1 and PL2 to 125 watts. And I'm sure we don't even need to lower it that much, but that probably would solve it. In fact, you could probably set the PL1 to 65, and then the PL2 to, say, 140, maybe 130, and you'd probably be fine. And even at 91, I mean, look. Whoops, where'd it go? Where did it go? Okay. Even at 91, you're still 9 degrees away from a throttle situation, which isn't the worst thing in the world, okay? But ideally, we never want it to throttle. All throttling means is some of the cores are going to shut down and the CPU performance is going to dip while it cools. So it doesn't, boil itself to death. It's a protection circuit that kicks in at 100 degrees Celsius. And we're 9 degrees away. Okay, so that's makes me a little nervous. Okay, but if 91 is the maximum, that's better than 95 or 96. We're trying to just give ourselves a little bit of headroom. Okay, if you walk into a room and the ceiling is 2 inches above your head, you better not forget, because if you stand on your tiptoes, you're going to hit your head. And if you jump, you're going to go right through the ceiling. So I like to have a little headroom between the top of my head and the ceiling, in the same way I like headroom between the maximum temp the CPU is going to hit under a maximum load versus when it's going to throttle. And 9 degrees is enough, but, all right, so at 91, it's fine. Makes me nervous because it cuts my headroom almost in half. I prefer 85. But if we lower the wattage, we slow the chip down and we increase its efficiency. And we raise the wattage, we lose efficiency. The more we raise it, the more efficiency we lose. That means Again, it's like adding more horsepower to a car. Our gas mileage is going down. We're going to go through 20 gallons of gas in 200 miles versus going through 20 gallons of gas and get 400 miles out of that tank. Only this is less obvious because it's sucking in electricity. And the more we raise that voltage, the more electricity it sucks in. And it converts that electricity into the performance you're seeing here, and it loses efficiency. The gas mileage goes down. So you're going to get a bigger electric bill. Is it something you'll notice? It depends what country you live in and just how far you're pushing it and how closely you pay attention to your electric bill. Here in America, electric's fairly inexpensive and not that big of a deal that anybody really cares, mostly, unless you're part of the green movement and you care about the environment. You want that to be efficient. And if you don't ever push your computer this hard, this is a non-issue regardless. This is like just something to do. If you're selling a computer to somebody that you're held accountable for and supporting, and it's a representative of the quality of the work you do, which is my situation, I want to ensure that that customer isn't going to call me with an overheating situation. That's why I run it. Why do you run it? Why don't you tell me, those of you running this, why are you doing it? Do you actually have a real justifiable reason to do it? And if so, educate me. Tell me why. Why does this matter? Somebody explain it to me, because I don't get it. I don't get why somebody at home watching YouTube videos would care about this unless you have an actual problem with your computer. And in that case, I'd rather talk about the problem you're having with your computer and help you solve it than have you go through all this nonsense that probably has no effect on you and whatever the issue is you're having. Likely the only issue you're having is you're running a test and your issue comes up with the test. But my question is, do you have any issue when you actually use the computer for something other than benchmarking? And if so, what is that problem? And let us help you solve it. I just don't get this fascination. I don't understand why people care so much about this. Most people never push their computers this hard, ever. And if you do, it's not for this length of time. It's not for a full 10 minutes. I realize there are some gamers out there and the games can push hard, right? I get that. But then I want to know, what game is it that's doing it? And what processor are you using? What motherboard, what cooler, what BIOS version? You know, that will help us to figure out what's going on. Yes, it may be this issue. This may be your solution. But for the vast majority of you out there watching this video, this has no impact on you. Just saying. We're just about done here. I want to thank all of my members in green here for joining us. Remember, if you want to chat with us and interact with me live during these live videos, please become a member. Please support the channel. We don't want corporate sponsorship. We want to be able to be independent, and we can't do that without your help. Thank you for all the super chats. Oh, I haven't checked the phone all day. Let me check it here while we're waiting and see if I've missed anything. Let's see, what do we have? Robert Barnes with a $30 PayPal contribution said, here's a small contribution for all you do and teach us and your community. Thank you. Well, that's very kind of you. Thank you, Robert Barnes. Chris Johnson sent a $25 Amazon gift card. He said, good afternoon, Carey. Here's a little something for the show. Well, that's going to go to Studio C. Thank you so much. Let's see. Did I get them all? I think I got them all. Again, thank you for the super chats. Thank you, members. Shout out to our friend Buster Oystein, Frankie B. You guys rock. Generosity is incredible. And of course, to everyone that supports the channel. We can't thank you enough. for enabling us to continue to do this in this format. We're going to keep doing it in this format so long as it's sustainable. Otherwise, the format will change as if the budget changes. That limits what we do or opens up the doors to what's possible. Coming up, we have more wireless router reviews. We have a dual screen laptop review. We have another Minis Forum, really cool, powerful Minis Forum computer, unlike competitors offer, to review. We have a new Synology NAS 923 Plus with a 10 gig card and a 10 gig switch and a 10 gig interface, so we can demonstrate what does 10 gig do. Again, for most of you out there, won't make any difference at all. But for those of us that move large files in our own networks, it's about 9 times faster, 10 times faster than 1 gig. So we've got that video coming up. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 computer builds, 6 computer builds waiting. I don't think I'll get through all of them here in Studio B, but I'm going to try and get through as many as possible, including the build where we're going to take the MicroATX board that we originally took out of this Jonsbo to change it to the back connectors. And we're going to take that board and put it into another case. We've got a Gamdius Apollo case. The first one we ordered, the glass was shattered, so we have a replacement. For those of you that are members, on Monday, I will open up and unbox the replacement, and we'll see if there's any damage, because the box is damaged again. But I don't hear sand. I don't hear broken glass rattling. But we'll save to cut the tape on the box on Monday for Monday's show. And if the case looks good, maybe we'll start that build on the members only show. I haven't decided. Anyway, we have lots and lots and lots of content coming. And a variety therein, right? And if anything comes in for repair between now and then, we'll certainly make room for that as well. Thomas MacT said it was torture watching you have trouble with this case. It really wasn't that bad. I mean, I've struggled with cases much worse than this one. And now that I know, you know, in retrospect, probably should put a modular power supply in there, because that area that I thought was really roomy, once the power supply and the hard drive cage go in there, it gets cut in half. And then with the power supply not being modular, it's just really crowding it. And sure, it's possible, but it'd be a lot more delightful just to have fewer cables. So a modular power supply, you know, maybe I'll switch it out. I don't know. And maybe I'll reseat that water pump, water block on the CPU to see if that makes any difference in cooling. Now see, it's running this test on single core and the fans have not ramped up at all. This machine is whisper quiet under normal usage. But look at our temps right now. We're down in the 30s and the test is still running. Look at this. These are our current temps right now. Look how low they are. But when we get up to this side, that's when you really hear those fans kick on. Now, in a way, it's reassuring to know the cooler is working like it should. And want to hear those fans ramp up from time to time. You just don't want them ramped up 100%, because that means either something's wrong or you underbought your computer for your needs. One or the other. Or you've overclocked it and done something to it to take it out of its engineering specifications, meaning the power limits that it was designed to run at by the engineers, not what you can get away with above and beyond that at the expense of degrading the silicon and needing a more aggressive cooling solution. Just so you can get that 10% more horsepower on a 500 horsepower car. I don't know how you're ever going to notice it outside of benchmarks. I don't think it's worth it, me personally. But if that's your hobby and that's what you enjoy, I mean, far be it for me to tell you not to do it. Just seems like there's a better way to spend your time, but you know, what do I know? Mark Gaines saying good night. Let's see. Paul Gray. What did Paul do? One more Amazon gift card sent. Oh, Paul's been very generous with us. Thank you, Paul, watching us from Australia. Yeah, $100 Amazon gift card from Paul. Very nice. Very generous, Paul. Thank you. Mitch just got back from Australia. He's home now, safe and sound. And then he's off to, I think he's off to Hollywood tomorrow or today. And then he should be back on Monday. And then I think things will settle in for him. However, I've been so busy, you know, trying to get Studio C set up and clear out Studio B. We haven't had time to hang out anyway. So, but we'll bring him back probably at Studio C will be the next time. Maybe we'll see him at Studio B. I don't know. But definitely Studio C. And then we can catch up on his trip and see his footage. We already shared the footage previously on a different video. And we'll certainly show that again. So, okay, our maximum temp never changed on the second test. We're still at a 91 degrees Celsius, which we hit on the multi-core test. And on the single core test, it's pretty mild as far as any resource intensity went. So there you go. There's the scores. We close all this out. Let me shut this down. Gotta activate Windows. I will go to VIP CDK deals, and I'm going to go buy a Windows 10 Pro product key because it's cheaper. And I'm going to use that to activate my Windows 11. Now that I know everything works, hold on, let me get camera 1 back. Now that I know everything works in the system, oh, I shouldn't have shut it off. I don't get the lights. Let's turn it back on. I want the lights. And there is also a little light around the power button there, as you can see. And then your USB ports are right there. Come on, that's a pretty good looking little case, isn't it? And you'd never know all those cables are all jammed in there. It looks beautiful. Do you even see any cables? Look at that. Red and black. Turn the lights out. Show it off. Just got to get the right angle for the camera, I guess. Anyway, you get the gist. All right, there it is. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll keep it dim so you can really see the lights here. Thanks for hanging out with me on this Friday. I hope you have a great rest of your day and an amazing weekend. I look forward to seeing the members back on Monday for a members only video. And coming up next week, I already mentioned all that stuff. I just don't know the order of it yet. I apologize for the late start today. What can I do? It happens. Thanks for your patience. Thanks for your support. Thanks, of course, to Mara for taking care of all the background administrative work. There's a lot of it to deal with on this channel. And, of course, to our friends at Acronis and RoboForm and VIP CDK deals. Discounts for all of those products that I use in my business and have been using for over a decade. Not VIP. VIP is new to me. Well, I've been using them about 3 years. But these are actual products I use, and they have discounts for you guys. And the product links below this video, in the video now. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all again very, very soon. Until next time, bye for now.